All right, King Killers, we're covering chapters 37 through 40 in this episode. This is a good theory episode as we discuss Faeriniel and the ever-eccentric puppet. Lots on the Amyr, Tehlins, Chandrians, and Angels, and how the more recent sides might have formed. We also have some amazing insight in the background singing skills of the Tahl, what Fae's strip clubs might be like, and what we expect from Puppet in Book 3. So sit back and enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Kingkiller podcast. We are a man down again this week, and we will be a man down moving forward. Fitz is no longer going to be able to make the time to get on the podcast. So me and Tim are just going to quit because, you know, what can we do? I mean, there's no point in life, really. Like, I've really been in the doldrums since I found out about this earlier today, and, you know, it's very, very depressed, and so that's it.
I would say I'm going the other direction. I'm saying good riddance. I don't remember who we're talking about. Frankly, let's just move on. You know.
Well, now I feel a lot better. Like suddenly, now my mood is uplifting, feeling empowered. Yeah, who is that guy? There's there was some annoying background noise in the previous 32 episodes.
It's it was like an albatross, as they say, it's hanging around the neck that is the Kingkiller podcast. And now that it is off, we are freed up. Like the phoenix, we shall rise into the skies of the podcast heavens.
Yeah. Yeah,
that felt so stupid as I was saying it.
Slayed Voldemort, and now we're ready to go and start our families and let them take over, I guess.
Yeah, let's procreate. Let's go spread our seed around the podcast world.
Yeah, that's really when we started this. That's kind of something I was looking forward to, is leaving the podcast to future generations. Just let the kids take over, just like a family business.
Yes, it's like a family business. Yeah, someone else continues the conversation.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to do your podcast. Well, it's a family business. It's a tradition.
You were made for this. You don't have much of a choice, son. It's time.
Our parents used to talk over dub tape recorders, and then they passed it on to us, and now we're passing it on to you. So you're just gonna fucking suck it up and do it.
That's very motivating. That's a good way to really, really pass the baton to future generations. Suck it up and do it. Yeah. This is your responsibility now.
Yeah, you'll get a really good product out of that too. Just force someone to do it.
I mean, there are many stories in the past of this being that's people's lineage. They take over the family business, which they didn't want to have anything to do with, but what am I going to do? I don't have the backbone to stand up to my parents.
Look, we built up 37 million listeners so far, and you got to carry that tradition on. You can't just let that go. There's a lot of people dependent on us. Oh, and speaking of 37, that's the chapter we're actually on. So boom, works out well. With the exact amount, we have 37 million fans exactly. I keep track on a daily basis, and that's where the exact number we're at. We hit that today.
So we just breached 36,999,000?
Yep. 999. Wow.
I know we were there yesterday. I saw that number. It ticked up.
We gained one new listener today that put us at 37 million. We gained the first 36,999,000 really quick. The last 1,000 has just been one a day.
And it's not, we don't have it digital. We have an actual like the old alarm clocks that are plastic, and it literally flips the thing over like a Rolodex. We saw that one, and it just keeps. We had to build onto it because originally, it was only built for like 100,000, but after that many listeners, it's worth it.
Yeah, we're crushing it. Crushing it is what we're saying. But so going into chapter 37, it's titled "A Piece of Fire." And in this chapter, it's where Kvothe tells Will and Sim the story of Skiop traveling through Faeriniel. He's going to go up to multiple different camps for food, gets turned away by everybody before stumbling on a Rue troop who decides to feed him. They ask him for a story, and then they ask him to join their family.
Yeah, this chapter picks up from where we left off, and actually this group of chapters, we get a lot more about the Amyr.
Yes, there's a lot of, I think, pivotal information in this. We've talked about a lot of it as far as Faeriniel and Skiop, who I think is Scarpy. Going back through it, when you kind of have it in your mind that Skiop could be Scarpy, it definitely sticks out like that. If Skiop is not Scarpy, I think Rothfuss, missed a golden opportunity because he seems like a Scarpy type character.
There's so many parallels between the two and what they do. And yeah, like you said, knowing that, it takes on a lot more, and you kind of see it in the details. But yeah, I mean, there's information in this chapter from the Adem. There's, like you said, Faeriniel, however you say it, I always have trouble with that. There's the Barrow Drog. I mean, we'll go through them, but there's a lot packed in here, and a lot more about the Rue, man, and sort of their history. So this group of chapters is really big on the overall connections and sort of the underlying things that are going to, I think, play a big role in book 3. The things that haven't been completely tied up that are looming rather large in the story.
Yeah, I mean, the way it starts off, it gives the impression that Faeriniel is this like way station where people don't go there to just be there. They go there because they're off to somewhere else. And you get it at the end with the Rue. We're headed towards Bellinay, which could be where the university is. The Bellinay Barons. I think they might even say Bellany, but we'll come across it. But and then Skiop was on his way to Tinue. So for them to be crossing in Faeriniel, like, and they're crossing here, like, if it was not like a different realm where you're traveling to different spots, like a way station area, you would think they would have met on the Great Road, not Faeriniel. Like, why would you meet, if you're one's heading to Tinue and one's heading to Bellinay, those should be in the opposite directions of each other. So if they're crossing in the real world, then they should be crossing on the Great Road, on the road to Tinue. So it doesn't make any sense if Faeriniel is not like a kind of a portal area.
Well, it doesn't even, I think it's in this chapter, they even talk about the Greystones on top of another 2, like a doorway.
That's coming up when they're settling their bet on the the Greystones. Okay. But yeah, there is a circle of Greystones.
Yeah. Well, that's Faeriniel, right? That's kind of Well, and then what gets said in the first paragraph, right at the beginning, there's no inn where the roads meet. INN. There's no inn where the roads meet, so there's no like place for people to stay. Yet there's a bunch of people camping because they come here on their way, or they're camping on their way to where they're about to go. So yeah, it's that channel / portal to these other areas. And that, I mean, that's pretty clear because you have all these people that are going to vastly different places. Why they all come into this area to go to all those different places?
Yeah, it only and when you combine it with everything else we know about Greystones and the stuff we're gonna come across when Sim and Kvothe settle their bet, that there's Greystones in these weird spots. They called them like road markers, but some were on top of mountains, some at the bottom of a river. Like, for them to be in these weird spots, it only makes sense if they're portal. And we know that they're at least doorways into the Fae. I mean, we see Kavoth go into the Fae by Greystones. He comes out of the Fae by Greystones. Valerian tells him that the way in is through Greystones. There's, the dad's poem is, about Greystones is leads to something L, which is more than likely Faeriniel. So there's all these indications that Greystones are these portals. Faeriniel is described as like a road. It's not a road, but it's a place that leads to everywhere else. It seems highly likely that Faeriniel is like a way station, a point where you can zip in and out into different places. I'm curious if there's only one entrance or if there's multiple ways in and multiple ways out. It would seem like it would be more useful if it's multiple ways in, multiple ways out, but I'm curious how it exactly works.
Sounds like a flying J.
A flying J? Oh, yeah, like the gas station? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a big rest stop, or what do you call that? It's a big truck stop. Yeah.
Yep, lots of lot lizards.
Well, he doesn't mention that here. One question I do have, though, like saying Skiop is Scarpy, Scarpy, Skiop. What's going on with Skiop here? He's in a tattered robe. He's barely moving. He seems to be, he's starving.
Yeah, old man going from nowhere to nowhere. He had no hat for his head, no pack for his back. Again, if you remember when we talked about Skiop, I think this is all the way back in episode 8 when I gave the theory on Scarpy. And we got a video on YouTube where we combine some of the stuff we say from episode 5 and episode 8 in one of our clip videos where I put together all the times where we talk about Scarpy and some of the implications around this. But I think that the no hat for his head, no pack for his back, it sounds like he's the Tinker in Hespe's story, where Ajax takes all his shit from him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think
so this would be shortly thereafter or sometime thereafter.
Yeah. That's my guess, is that Scarpy is, I think Scarpy is that Tinker, and I think Skiop is that Tinker. I think that makes the most sense, that the Tinker, Skiop, and Scarpy are all the same person, and he must be a Ruach that, is immortal if he's lived this long. But it fits so well with, all the different aspects of this character and the aspects of the Tinker and Scarpy. If they align so well together, that I would be surprised if that's not, one single person.
Well, and also the events of these characters' existence and how they have similar impacts, right? Their stories are huge. And what Skiop does with his story, Scarpy does with his story to move Kavoth through his life. So that kind of what's interesting to me about that. So if he did have his pack and hat and all that taken by Jax, it seems over time he gets his shit back together, right? Like when he's at the bar with Kavoth, he's not this guy. He's not struggling. He doesn't have a cane. He has white hair and he's an older man, but he's not malnourished and everything else. So I think the story, Scarpy's story, it seems.
But he doesn't seem like he's like rolling in the dough. He's got little kids giving him change so he
Money
can buy a
for
beer.
drinks.
Yeah. He seems, in a similar state, but I think he's got more of a purpose, that now he's a storyteller. And it seems like his storytelling, the descriptions of Skiop's storytelling and Scarpy's storytelling is very similar to Kavoth when he plays music. It seems magical. It seems like something that just wraps people up. Like there's more to it than just them speaking words or singing words.
That certainly happens here when he tells his story to the Rue. When we get that also with Scarpy at the bar, where it's like they get engrossed in it. Um, I lost my train of thought what I was thinking in regards to that. Oh well, yeah. So it's kind of like he's a member of the Amyr type thing where he's pulling Kavoth in a direction. It's not like he's just hanging out at that bar. He was for a period, but it seemed like he was there for Kavoth.
Yeah.
I don't think he was there for years. He was there for a short period, a short enough period to where the word got out, the word found Kavoth, Kavoth came in, and Scarpy's gone, right? He gets taken out by the Tehlin priest, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they arrest him for blasphemy, basically.
Yeah, we kind of get a picture of of that Tehlin priest aggression with Puppet here too. So
yeah,
there's a little bit of a mirroring there, somewhat.
Yeah, he seems to be a bigger character. Like it seems like when Will and Sim are like, well, we thought, he would be something bigger. I think they're right that he is a bigger character, and I think that it's not just, well, we tell this story because this is, how you can get, ask for water and they'll offer you wine, and you gotta keep asking for water. Like it seems like a story that is more important than that because it's Faeriniel. There's a circle of Greystones. The Amyr and the Siridae. The Siridae plays the most prominent role in it outside of the Rue troop. So when you put in those key points, it seems like it's a more important story than just, this is some story. If this is just a story that he is telling Will and Sim, and the only piece of information that it is imparting on us is how you're supposed to react with the Rue, well, that's useless information for us.
It's not that, because I mean, think about all the stereotypes of the world that are in the story as well. I mean, it's huge, man. It's a lesson on how the story works, or how their world works. It's a huge history lesson. There's mythology involved, but it's not. Well, I guess it's their mythology is included. It teaches, if you consider that, how much we learn about how this world works. But this is the Rue talking to themselves. These are stories they tell themselves. So they're historians of the world. This is how they're learning those things. This is how those histories stay alive. It's all word of mouth, right? Well, especially we know that now because the truth is being pruned from, the archives, for example. So it's out there. It's very difficult to find, right? You got to be damn near genius to be able to piece it together. I mean, there's not a lot of puppets in this world. So so that, I mean, it's funny that Kavoth puts it that way, because he does describe one utility of the story, or a piece of the utility in the story, but there's so much more in terms of how the world works. And I like that it includes like those stereotypes, and they even comment on what a stereotype is, which is pretty great. And he even has to like apologize. Well, Sim gets heated because, and that's actually coming up, but Sim gets heated in terms of who he is. Willem, there's an apology because of who he is and how his people are represented in the story.
Yeah, like they portray the Seal Dish as basically just kind of money grubbers, and he apologizes, like he's like, you look like you were gonna say something, and he's like, it's like, I may, but it will wait until after.
Well, what's funny about that too, it follows silver was worked into their harness, and silver was mixed with the iron of their shoes. Then they have all these, there's certain things they're wearing, gold chains glittering in the firelight. Like, these people are flush with cash, yet they won't give a little bit of meat to a beggar because he doesn't have any money to pay him.
Yeah.
So talk about penny pinchers, man.
Fuck you, pay me.
Well, and just even the way, and similar in our world, just because, there's disdain. There's disdain between people, and they always find their reasons. But even the way they say "filthy shim," it sounds like a similar disdain in our world for people that are penny pinchers or have money in the first place, and they end up attracting disdain from people who don't.
Yes,
right? Who aren't in their world. That's why it's an interesting book, man. He's willing
they
to
all
include
got their
these things. It's a real
they
world.
all got their stereotypes. I mean, the Rue are obviously extremely shat upon. The Adim, people look at them sideways. The Adim look at everybody else sideways. The Aturans got their issues, and then you have the Ventish. They have their people look down at them for different reasons. The Modeg looks down on people. Like everybody there's distinct cultures in this world. They're very different cultures, and it makes sense that people from a culture that's not anywhere near that would, especially if you're not living, in a melting pot like the university where you're intermingling with these people. If you're only seeing if you see like one Modegan person your entire lifetime, and you're from some like backwards, you're a farmer who's just, a salt of the earth type of person, then you got a flamboyant, rich Modegan dude like their fucking buddy.
Savoy. Yeah.
Savoy, yeah. Like
Yeah, he
Savoy
sticks out
comes
like a
rolling
sore
through.
thumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, and we see it. We see it in when Kavoth goes to some of these towns, right? They get treated like, they just, we see it originally even with like Abinthy, where the constable's just like, yeah, we like it that way. We don't want people like you around here. It's like, you don't even know who I am. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. But that's that. So, I mean, all of this is just tremendous world building. You see the distinct differences. You see the prejudices people have. That is how our world is.
Yeah, I mean, the entire human history is very tribal, and so if you try to write a story where there's not any kind of tribalistic aspects and human characters, then you're just not writing a realistic story. Especially if there's distinct cultures that don't interact very often. Like, and then you bring them together, and then they just like, oh, I love how different you are, and I love how different you are.
Everybody just applauds each other's differences.
Get out of here, man.
Yeah.
That's not how shit works. Like, I mean,
realistic at all.
You're at that point, you're just painting your dream scenario and like how you wish things were, and and it's like, okay, I mean, you could do that in a story, but that's not realistic. I mean, that's not how humans are wired. It's going to be very, very difficult to tell that kind of story in a realistic way when humans are hardwired to be different than that.
Yeah, I mean, you're lacking verisimilitude, and on top of you're lacking the ability to infuse tension in a very natural way, and it's a way that is true to our world. So it's a huge missed opportunity. It's a mistake, as far as I'm concerned, if somebody writes a world that way, especially a world like this, where it's very important that we're believing in this world because it is so unlike ours in so many ways. Right? There's freaking magic, man. We got to have things that we can hold on to that are realistic.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing like if they live together, they work near each other, so they're interacting with each other, and so they get comfortable with their differences. But if you're not around the differences, I mean, yeah, you throw someone else in, and people get get defensive, they get territorial, they get protective, and so you have to have that element in stories, especially if you're going to do a story in this kind of era with the technology, as far as how quickly people can travel and that kind of stuff. Like, there's going to be some tribalism.
What I love so great about the way he does it is we're 300 pages into the second book, and most the cultures thus far, they're very similar. They speak similar languages. They sort of live a similar way. There are differences, obviously, and we get those pepperings in there. But now we're getting introduced to the Adem, and we start to see just how different they are. And they're so different in such a very interesting way. So one of my favorite things about book 2 is that journey into the Adem, getting to know how different how they communicate, just how they look at things so differently, how they, what they covet versus what other people do, what they I mean, we'll get into all that, but just even that introduction when they go by the Adem, it's just, he's literally just scared of them. The Adem, if I remember right, the Adem don't really get a choice of whether or not they're going to help him or not. He just sees them. He knows about the blood red clothes.
Yeah, he just kind of dips out because he's like, the Adem are called the silent folk and they speak only rarely. The old man knew many stories of the Adem. He'd heard that they possessed a secret craft called the Lithani. This let them wear their quiet like an armor that would turn a blade or stop an arrow in the air. This is why they seldom spoke. They saved their words, keeping them inside like coals in the belly of a furnace. Those hoarded words filled them with so much restless energy they could never be completely still, which is why they were always twitching and fidgeting about. Then when they fought, they used their secret craft to burn those words like fuel inside themselves. This made them strong as bears and fast as snakes. So they start to kind of build the culture of the Adem here, and then it gets built out a little bit more. And then when we come across Tempe, it's like, is this superstitious nonsense true? And then it's, you eventually learn what's going on, why they're always fidgety, twitching, looking down. They don't look anybody in the eye. They don't speak that many words. Like, you eventually learn the cultural reasons for these things. But in the beginning, it's a very, they're thought of in a very magical, mythical type of way. And people treat them with this weird, superstitious reverence.
Dude, it's all the way he eventually does it. Tempe's so perfect in terms of how he utilizes Tempe, because it's spoon fed. It's very slow progression where Kvothe is watching him. He's picking up like little idiosyncrasies of the way that he is, and he's not sure if it's just this guy or is that the Adem, and then slowly they get to sort of know each other and everything. It's so great. And then, all the justifications are built in, and Rothfuss gives us all the justifications for why they act this way, why, it's all in, how they live, how they communicate. It's all within the way that he is, the way that Tempe is, and the way that even this is described. I love this story of the woman that he saw just like lay waste to a whole group of massive soldiers.
Yeah.
And just completely, and I love like the little detail of like, after she lays waste to him, she licked the blood from the back of her hand like a cat. That little detail, man, I mean, that just tells you that not only can they fight like a son of a bitch, they enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it gives that little, Roth is so fucking great with details, man.
Yeah, it's the introduction of Tempe is done so well because he can't hardly speak their language, and so because like if you replace Tempe with Vachette, there's not all the mystery and the build up and everything, because Vachette would have just set the story straight. Like, why are you fidgety? Why are you doing all this? She could have just explained it. Mm-hmm. He didn't have the words to explain why he does what he does. Mm-hmm. And so he's just keeping quiet because he doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to embarrass himself. And so he just seems weird.
What's so great too is
someone who could have spoke better would have Kvothe would have got a completely different experience.
Yeah, there's more mystery still contained, and then what's so great is once he gets to their where they live, we find out Tempe's like, he's like the low rung, man.
Yeah.
He's not even that he's not
not that smart. He's not that skilled. He's not that like we see him and we're like, this dude's just stomping fucking people.
Well,
like,
he gets justification. And the buildups are fantastic because you have those face-offs where it's like, I can take all these guys in this room, and he says it without even sounding arrogant. He's just 100%
like,
certain.
do you want to get more? You want to get more women to have your back, and he's meaning that with complete earnest.
Yeah,
like he's being completely earnest, and they think it's a huge insult.
Yeah,
and so like we don't, you don't, when you're first reading it, you don't get the cultural significance there. But yeah, but also the watch my back, when he's just meaning like, watch when I stomp these people, watch my back,
watch my
how straight
form.
It is, and watch my form as I just stomp these people, not have my back.
Yeah, and then it's in it.
It's similar to like Will with the idioms.
Well, yeah, because what's such a great spin on that is Kavoth does think he needs to interject, and the fact that he then tries is a massive insult. Like for Tempe, it's like never do that, never get involved.
Not an
This is my
insult,
fight.
like it was
It's
that
inappropriate.
it was super wrong. It's
Yeah,
unethical what he.
well, that's
he
what I
was,
mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm going for at least.
yeah.
Yeah, I love it, man. And this is a great. Again, this is why the rereads are so great, man. Because knowing all this, now this has so much more impact. Right, observing it the first times through, they just sound so weird. They sound mysterious in a very odd way, and eventually gets we get so much satisfaction once we learn where all that comes from. And on the read throughs, it's right here. It's fucking great.
Yeah, then we get the Aturans who are just brutal. They're like,
Yeah,
grab that dude, we'll make him be our donkey.
Jesus,
And
yeah.
so he just takes off from them. Then he comes and he sees the vents, and he's so, looks so shabby that they think he's a barrow drog, which is interesting because, as we discuss in that our bonus episode, that King Phasia is the Barrow King. He's a drog, and he's the like OG king of Vent. And so it makes, once you understand that, it makes perfect sense why there would be this superstition, this fear of drogs from the Vents. So they talk about it as like, it's a superstitious nonsense. But if you knew about King Phasia and you knew he was a barrow drog and you knew all that background, then it's not so superstitious anymore. It's like the people who fear the Fae. It's not superstitious. It's experience.
Mm-hmm.
They
Well,
understand. It's just what's happened is their ancestors experienced the danger, and then maybe they do sparingly, every now and again experience it, but it's that experience is getting passed down, and so
well, it's
it becomes
funny.
almost superstitious.
Yeah, it's funny because it loses its function over time. Because if you're not seeing the actual experience, then it's just like, oh, it becomes silly, it becomes superstitious. But
Yeah.
it's all deriving from actual reasoning, So it's again, that's great fucking writing, man. That's building the world with history. And I remember first time reading Barrow Drog, I'm like, I don't give a shit what that is. Like, it was just like a type of thing where it's like, if I tried to make again, we talked about this many times. If you're trying to make a bunch of connections, you're like, this is something that definitely probably has meaning, but it also just seems like I have no fucking clue. This could mean nothing. It could just be like they're scared of this thing. It's like Shamblemen or something. That's what it jumped out like on a first read for me, without making those connections.
I also think it's significant that they're in Faeriniel when they see him and they freak out and think it's a barrow drog, because I think King Phasia is in Faeriniel.
So the door,
So it's not
he's
just
behind is somewhere in this vicinity.
Yeah, so like I don't think it's just that they were freaking out because barrow drogs are behind every corner. I think they were in the place where the vintage people would be extremely scared of a barrow drog if King Phasia went to Faeriniel, and that's where their fucking big barrow drog is hiding out, and they're in there. They're going to be a bit jumpy. So I don't think that's a minor thing. I think there's a lot of big clues in this story. Like the stories, because this is a book that is largely stories upon stories. I think the stories and the poems and that kind of stuff, those are the things you got to really pay attention to. I think those are the big clues. That's where he's letting the big information out. So I think there's a lot of important clues in this story, and I think that's one of them.
Yeah, dude, this one's packed. It's so packed because I mean, the next thing we start talking about the Amyr. Tehlu still he knew the Amyr were part of Tehlu's church, And then Willem comes back with they weren't part of the church. So this is where their whole debate starts.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and this is building off of what we just learned about the Amyr and the Siridae and everything from the pot. So this is picking right up off of that.
Yeah, and I mean it's important because we get the debate on. This is where we start to go down the rabbit hole of where did the Amyr start?
And
why is there no information?
Yeah.
Who disbanded them? And do they still exist? So we get the big pieces of information on the Amyr in the, that we're going to discuss in this episode, in these chapters. And we get the first big explanation of like a Siridae, and like it's not just a dude, a guy that is above the law. It's like, I mean, this guy is the law.
Mm-hmm. Hey, dude, what we were just talking about in the previous episode, we kept sort of focusing on for the greater good, right?
Yeah.
And this guy is, I mean, literally his introduction is, "No, I am of the order Amyr. None should come between me and my tasks. I will act for the good of all, though gods and men might bar my way." I mean, like the idea that gods may bar his way and he's still going to run through them if that's his task. I mean, that's pretty serious shit.
Yeah, and it makes me curious again. Like you have the Siridae and Faeriniel. Are the Siridae the Ruach members of the Amyr? Whereas like the other guys below the Siridae were the human Amyr. I'm curious if that's, what the distinction is between a Siridae and an Amyr. Just like a human Amyr, like maybe like a Gibeah or something. I'm curious if the Siridae were like the Ruach. And so that's why when he's like, no gods, because that would make sense if you're a Scarpy or something like that, like no Aleph or Tehlu or any of these, these people. These are my contemporaries. They are not my, they are not the people who tell me what to do.
So this is the hammer and waking up certain people, or not waking up, but when he goes out with the hammer and certain people make one choice, others make the other. So the ones that aren't the Chandrian. But what I'm saying is that group, isn't that the Ruach?
Yeah, Tehlu would be Ruach, Aleph, Lanre, Lyra, like all those people, like the immortals of the world.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Basically, so if that's the case, then the Siridae is like only a handful of people.
Could be more than 5, yeah. It could be. I there's no concrete evidence that the Siridae are Ruach, but that would make the most sense to me because why wouldn't Scarpy and the Ruach that started the Amyr, why would they have this offshoots of humans that are not led by them? Like the Siridae are the heads of the Amyr, the leaders of the Amyr. Like, so you would think that would be, the Ruachs. Like, who else would it be? Like, is it just like some, humans that, well, I really trust you. So, like, no, well, okay, then what are they doing? Like, if they're not the Siridae, what the fuck have they been doing?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it talks about, like, also it's like, and as the order stood behind him, no church, no court, no king could move against him, for he was one of the Siridae, highest of the Amyr. If he killed an unarmed man, it was not murder in the order's eye. If he strangled a pregnant woman in the middle of a street, none would speak against him. Should he burn a church or break an old stone bridge, the empire held him blameless, trusting all he did was in service of the greater good. If he's not a god, like a godlike figure, then why the fuck are they putting so much faith in this dude? Like, what's the qualifications?
Yeah,
and
I mean,
what is Scarpy? I mean, not Scarpy. I keep saying Scarpy. Celatos. Celatos, the heads of the Amyr, their OG Amyr, the Ruachs. If they're not Siridae, what are they doing in the story? It would make much more sense for the story if the Siridae are the people like Celatos.
Yeah, that does make a lot more sense. And it's also it still becomes very interesting if, like, say Lauren, or like you said, Gibeah. How do they get in the fold? Like, what does it
Yeah.
take? What's the qualification process basically, to get that? Because obviously the Siridae have this granted power, like you're just talking about. I mean, all of this again in the service of the greater good, going back to that. And then we find that in with Gibeah's book also, again, greater good. So yeah, what's the
Because like even like
initiation
Florian's like
process and all that?
there were no human Amyr. So to me, and she's like, it sounds like, you're talking about people playing at costume or whatever. And so it makes more sense to me if the Siridae are the real Amyr, and then all these other guys are kind of their lackeys. They're that
Or
they're
maybe
putting out there to do,
well,
to
and
work for them and to pull the strings that they want them to pull.
what might make a lot of sense is they're not affiliated. Like the Siridae maybe don't even affiliate themselves with these other Amyr actors. Perhaps they're just acting for the greater good of their own volition.
Yeah.
And the Siridae doesn't have anything to do with them. They're doing what they're doing, and if other people are acting in a certain way, they're not getting involved unless there's a need. Like in this case, he's trying to save a girl that's false charges of some sort.
Yeah.
Like they have their missions, what have you. But I have a feeling like the Laurens, if he is, and the Gibeahs, and maybe they're just acting on their own, and maybe this is their obsession. Like, damn, the mayor, right? The mayor Alvaron, his obsession with trying to figure out, this type of information, yet gives up. Maybe there are, many people that have lived throughout the world that they're trying to act on behalf of the Amyr, yet they're not. There's not necessarily an affiliation where the Siridae are, knighting them or anything like that. It could just be they're acting of their own volition without connection.
Well, you also, I do think that they are connected, because like if you're Celatos and like some guys are going around like we're on Team Celatos, we're Amyr, like this dude's all
Well, they're not
powerful. Like
talking about it,
why wouldn't he go
right?
and like, yeah, but why wouldn't he be hunting these people down, fucking taking them out?
Well, I wonder,
Because they
and
existed in the open. Like the Amyr were in the open, the right
yeah, that's
hand
right.
of the
Yeah.
Amyr. Like you would think, like Celatos would have put the the squash on that and taken those people out if they're giving him a bad reputation, because that's his group. I think it's likely that they're more like lackeys. They're they're working for the Siridae, the actual real Amyr. And you have like the talk of their their tattoo that they have, like where
I was
it's
gonna say
the
Skiab.
flaming building. It
Yeah,
sounds like Mir Terrenial.
yeah. I was gonna say, but okay. So, but just teasing that out. So Skiab doesn't have. He's not a Siridae. He didn't have the tattoos and all that, right?
Not, I mean, the only times we see Celatos is before the Amyr are created and the day the Amyr are created.
No, I'm
So,
talking about. I'm just saying if Skiab, let's say,
oh,
is a
Skiop. I was
yeah.
thinking Celatos. Yeah, sorry. No, we don't see Skiop with any. We don't hear about him having
Yeah.
Amyr tattoos,
So I
Siridae
wonder.
tattoos.
Yeah, Siridae. So, but he could still be. It sounds like he's still a Mir. So yeah, maybe there is some loose connection, or it's yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
I
Obviously,
think
we don't know how
I
that
think
works.
like, yeah, I think there's people that work below the head
Oh,
people.
that reminds me. I was thinking, is there something in the winter pageantry that we get, or is that the Chandrian people dress up as the Chandrians, stealing people's shit, and then is it? I'm trying to remember. Is it Tehlu? Someone says something and they act as Tehlu, and then the
Yes.
Chandrian run off. Is that
Yeah,
what it is? Okay,
yeah, they have like one person's Telu, and he's got to go and banish all the different demons around the city.
got it. Yeah, I was trying to recall if there's something contained within that story that kind of lends more to what we're talking about, but I guess
No,
not really
not as
so
far.
much.
It doesn't have anything to do with the Amyr. That's a straight angel story. Angels, or Telu as God story.
I do really like this Amyr character, and the way it all works out is great. Like he consistently is like, look, I'd give you something if I could. I can't. I don't have like my horse is eating better than I am, and like he's got scraps, literal
Yeah.
scraps, just to be able to keep himself sustained.
Stern too, where he's like, like I'd help you out, but now get the fuck out of my face, man.
Yeah, no, yeah, I like where is it? Like I like the exact way where it's just like, but I now must sleep, so you must go.
Yeah.
And it's not like, yeah, just like the way he says, it's like you can lay by my fire, and it's like, no, you need to get the fuck out of here now.
Get out.
I don't have time for this. And if you get in my way, I'll. It seems like he doesn't say this, but
You don't have to
he
go
does
home.
kind of say it. Like, yeah, if you stay here, I'll murder you. If you get in my way, if you keep fucking with me, I'll murder you, and it won't matter. I don't.
You don't have
it
to go
doesn't seem
home,
like
but
he has any
I'm
feelings
telling you,
about it.
if you stay here, it's going to end very badly for you.
Yeah,
It's nothing
So then
personal. It's just
yeah.
I'm gangster, and this is what I do.
So with the rue, so we get a couple things. We get the Circle of Greystones. We get the Rental Wood.
Yeah,
So that gets
obviously
put in here.
it's the center of Faeriniel, and it's
Mhm.
a circle of great greystones. I think that's obviously significant. I do not believe that Kavoth dreaming about a circle of greystones, and then the only other mention is in Faeriniel. I don't think that those are minor points. I think that is a major point, and I think that is likely the Doors of Stone, where the Doors of Stone is located. And so I think that is a very big clue. But then, then you get also just some of the more parts that are going to come up later where you get the rental wood and things along those nature. And you learn how the Rue interacts. So you get some world building information, and you get some big clues on, what's going on with their superstitions, what's going on with the Siri Day and the Amyr. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this chapter, and a lot of good stuff here with the Rue.
Yeah, with the Rental Wood, I believe that comes up when he's with the group, right? When he's got Martin and Hespy.
Correct. Yeah.
Daydan.
That's what they burn. Yeah. So that that it's not going to put up smoke plumes and give out their location.
Well, if I remember right, Daydan's dumbass is like, oh, just put wood. Fuck you. It's like, no, dumbass. There's a reason for this. He has to keep checking them. Yeah. Those are great, man. That dichotomy between the two of them, this big, like grizzled, guy that's, experienced in battle being talked to by some little redheaded kid in a cloak telling him what to do, and then having to play that out, and then slowly, Kavoth having to continuously just check his ass. And even still, the dude
Daydan is like a gigantic version of you.
That was not at all the case. But no, I do. That dichotomy between the two of them is it's frustrating to read, but it's also great because it's Kavoth growing and having to become a leader and having to do it with people that are begrudgingly, that are such a fucking pain in the ass to have to deal with. It's great because, I mean, throughout their journey, we get all the complications that would and could come up, and then all the fucking pain in the ass type of situations that Kavoth has to deal with in other personalities.
Yeah, he writes it well in the, like, he gains some respect or gains some fear, but then time goes by, and so those feelings kind of drift away, and then it reverts back to the, Daydan challenging him, and so it's a growth, but it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yeah. And so it's written in a realistic way, because it's not like, you just scare a dude one time and then they're forever, fearful of you. And, you got this grizzled veteran of, probably many battles that he sees this kid set afire, and then forevermore, he's just fucking bowing to this kid. That wouldn't be realistic. So Rothfuss does a really, really good job in these books of building relationships.
Well, and then also even just like the weather makes them all fucking pissed.
Yeah.
So now they're in a shitty mood. Nobody wants to do anything, and he's got to like try to get them going and everything. It's Yeah, it's great. And he even writes Kvothe as being really, cognizant of the complications between them, like what he looks like. Like he knows what's going on. I mean, he's very realistic about how Daydan feels about Kvothe and why he's acting a certain way, and he gets all that. There's like a self realization that's carried throughout. It's great. Of course, we're not there, so probably not have to go into it too far.
But yeah, then so he comes across the Rue, and they're very open to him. Unlike all the other dirtbag cultures, the Rue are the good culture. Everybody else sucks.
Dude,
but the Rue are super awesome.
They stop him. They're like, "Hey," because he's like, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm not gonna. I've lost hope. I'm just gonna fucking just keep walking." They're like, "Whoa, hey!" And then he's just like, "I'm nobody. I'm just following my road."
I do love the aspect of like you have all the stories about the Rue. Everybody thinks they're a bunch of dirtbags, and then like you get a story from the Rue that has a bunch of other cultures in it, and all the other cultures are dirtbags, and they're the fucking super dope people.
Yeah, it's great.
Like, it's so fucking great. Like even they can't resist putting a little fucking little hot sauce on their own tail.
Well, and they're the storytellers.
Yeah,
so they're gonna they're weaving a better story. We would be compelled to consider and think that they probably weave a better story than these other cultures to begin with anyway. But it's great.
So yeah, they give him the water and the wine, let him clean himself off. He gets all emotional because everybody's is a big old mean jerk to him, and then they ask him for his story, and so it's like not knowing what else to do. Skiap began to speak. He told how he had come to Faeriniel, how he had walked from one fire to the next, hoping for charity. At first his voice faltered and his story stumbled, for he had been a long time and was not used to talking, but soon his voice became stronger, his words bolder, and as the fire flickered and reflected in his bright blue eyes, his hands danced along with his old dried voice. Even the Edema Rue, who know all the stories in the world, could do nothing but listen and wonder. When his story came to an end, the troopers stirred as if waking from a deep sleep. For a moment they did nothing but look at each other. Then they looked at Skiap. There's just no way that this is just like, oh, this guy's a great storyteller, and then there's nothing else about him.
Yeah, no, he's not. Yeah, he's saying this. He's putting that in there, obviously with intention. Yeah, I mean, bright blue eyes, white hair, white beard. Like, I mean,
same effect when he tells the story. It has the same effect on the children. Like, they're just too close. Like, if he does not make Skiap Scarpy, I think he just like blew a huge opportunity. If he had not thought of that, like he should by now have been like, oh shit, Skiap could be Scarpy, and I could do some interesting things with that, because Faeriniel likely plays a big part in book 3, and if Skiap is Scarpy, Scarpy could come in and be the key point man to point Kvothe into how to get into Faeriniel.
Well, if that's not what Rothfuss is doing, why say it in the way? Why say even the Edema Rue, who know all the stories in the world, could do nothing but listen and wonder? Why put so much emphasis?
Yeah,
just like, to add gravity to it?
Why is this random dude that is just an old beggar? Why is this dude like such a badass storyteller? And why don't we hear his story?
That's what I was going to say. Why not tell the story if you're not going to emphasize it this way? So obviously that's the intention. At least it has to be.
It's too big. It's too in your face, where there's got to be something to do with Skiap. And if he's not Scarpy, I can't think of anything else that Skiap would point towards.
Yeah, no, again, I think Rothfuss is very judicious with the connections he makes, and the bright blue eyes and the white hair, I think, is very intentional. Unless, I mean, is Skiap going to be fucking Cinder?
Yeah.
That connection doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He's also not moving around so spry,
Yeah, super Cinder like felt real bad about mocking him in front of his. He's like, man, you know what? I was kind of a dick in that situation. So I should go snap him out of it. Like, get him back to himself. Get him on a university, get him moving on. Like, I'll go tell him some stories, cheer him up, pep him up a little bit, build up that self-esteem. Yeah, that would make perfect sense for Cinder's character arc.
He is one hell of a shit talker, and that is one of my favorite things about that scene is the shit talking towards the Tehlin priest bodyguards is fantastic, man. But
and the fact that Scarpy is like, Tehlu would hate you. Like, I mean, it just lends so much to Scarpy that it can't just be like, because he talks about Tehlu as if he knows Tehlu. That they are contemporaries or friends or acquaintances. There's got to be something to do with Scarpy. There's got to be something to do with Skiop. I'd be shocked if they're not the same person. Even if he's not the Tinker, I think it would make a lot of sense if he is the Tinker. And that's why, their nips were blown off by his story, is because he's been around since the beginning.
So you think that's the story? You think that's the story he told?
I think he was, telling the Creation War story, and that kind of stuff is what my guess would be. He was telling him about Ajax and that kind of stuff. Yeah, just nips fucking blown off.
So not only are the Rue the storytellers, the entertainers, they're the storytellers because they carry the history of the world. They're the best. Well, we already know they're the best storytellers. This is why. Because they're not just telling stories, they're telling stories that are true to the history of the entire world and are the most important things about the history of the world. No wonder they're the best storytellers.
Yeah,
and they're picking up some great material here from old Skiapi.
Yeah, it would make sense too that Scarpy spent a lot of time with the Rue, and then now he's like going around as the storyteller guy. Mm-hmm. It would make sense that he if he was Skiop and he was that's just part of like what built him back up, got him back on his feet, and he was just mesmerizing them with stories for years that he just became the storyteller dude, and that became his purpose in life.
He's a good asset to have in a Rue troop, that's for sure.
Yeah,
until he gets that edema drip.
The edema drip. Fucking the edema chlamydia.
But so you do get Bellany or Bellanay here.
Is that what it said, Bellanay?
Yeah, we are bound for Bellanay ourselves, Terrace said. Would you consider coming with us instead when they invited old Skiapi along?
Yeah, so that's definitely the university.
Yeah, I mean these are very logical connections. That is for certain. Dude, the Rue are always so great because it's not just that they're cordial. Like when he's like, even a beggar has his pride. I'm not going to be a burden for you guys. And they go as far as saying, look around, like you're family now. And it's funny. I mean, you can't really, I don't know how you would point this out in any other way, but Skiop looks at the circle of faces and sees that what he said was true. So I don't know how you just see this acceptance in everybody's face, but clearly Skiop was just really touched that these people are around him. Clearly, for the first time, it sounds like in a long time, somebody gave a shit about him, and they literally accepted him in, which, it's touching in that way, but also it leads the path that you just described, that now Skiop's in the group and ends up with that drip, but gives him a bunch of stories.
Got that drip from Triss's, what was it, Tristan or
Terrace?
Terrace, yeah, Terrace's wife gave him the old drip. He had to dip out.
But
that's all I got on that chapter.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing it's kind of what I was saying anyway. This chapter lends a lot of gravity to. Well, he even goes as far as, this thing happened, though it was years and miles away. I've heard it from the mouths of the Edema Rue, and thus I know it to be true. Which again just gives a lot of gravity to the Rue. It's not just they have these stories; the stories are freaking true. As long as it's the real Edema Rue, obviously, we get a glimpse of, or in the last book, we get that glimpse of the imposters And not only are they not, telling the real stories or holding up a good reputation of the Rue, they're freaking rapists. I mean, they're pieces of shit.
All right, yeah, they had a couple things that were wrong with them. They were, I mean,
they're murderers, rapists, thieves. So there's a few things wrong with them there.
Like, look, I mean, there's no perfect characters. There's just no perfect people in this world. So
yeah, they had some flaws.
Get off their back. It's like, I mean, hey, like Cinder could be a good guy. Just because he did what he did doesn't mean he's a really bad guy. Like,
that is
sometimes you like to, you just got a sick sense of humor. You're a little dark humor. You like to fucking poke at a little kid that, just had his parents die. Like that's funny. That can be funny.
Well,
you don't get to judge.
It's your audience.
Maybe maybe they were funny murderers and rapists.
Jesus. That instance though is a great example that you use in terms of the whole Mary Sue BS, where it's not just that Kavoth is not a Siridae. He doesn't get to just lay waste to a group of people because he's offended. He killed all these people. He murdered women. He murdered, he murdered an old woman, I think. They were poisoning him, granted, and they were trying to murder him. So in a way, it's also self-defense. But I mean, he pretty viciously lays waste to that entire group.
He murdered people that couldn't defend themselves at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty vicious.
Yeah.
But like you said, maybe it was funny. I don't know. I mean, maybe there was a way he did it that was comical.
Yeah. Yeah, he funny stabbed him in the stomach.
Funny stabbed?
Yeah.
Maybe he had one of those prop knives where he's like, see, it doesn't hurt me. And then he pulls out a real one and gotcha.
Tricked you.
That's funny.
You
right?
thought I was going to stab you with that fake knife, but I stabbed you for real. Hilarious joke. I'm a prankster.
I'm incorrigible.
All right, so 38 is titled Kernels of Truth. In this chapter, we get the boys. They're back in town. They're discussing different elements of the story, and then they end up making bets over disagreements about some of the details and, get a little heated at each other for a moment as well.
Yeah, it's pretty funny how Will basically suggested that he might get offended by the story, but then Sim gets his nipples all twisted, and then Kavoth comes over the top of him. So they all clutch their pearls on this one.
Yeah, Sims wasn't too bad. He was just like, I could be, could have got offended by that, such a big stereotype. Kavoth loses his shit.
Yeah.
He starts screaming at him.
It's fun. This comes up again, a similar back and forth. Oh, yeah, it's with Gibeah's book. Sim gets all freaked out, and he's like, well, and it goes back to what we were talking about in the last episode, the greater good discussion. It goes back to that greater good discussion in terms of medical knowledge and, what it took to get there and all that stuff. But rather than going there yet, what we do get...
there's not enough of that. I mean, honestly, there's just not enough of that in the real world. We need to be experimenting on live people, like cutting them up and really getting some experiment going on.
So you're a big fan of Mangala? That's your guy.
Yeah. I mean, anything that's gonna help me, that doesn't hurt me. Like, I'm a big fan of that.
Oh, jeez, man. That is pretty vicious.
Yeah, Gibby is a
all
dark,
about that omelet.
Dark. Yeah, Gibby is a dark motherfucking dude.
Well, it seems like his rep portrays him as being super dark, obviously, and it seems like it's probably a lot of that is based on the truth. But I'm always a little bit skeptical. The more I learn about history, the more I am a little bit skeptical of how much can actually be attributed to that one individual. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes
sounds
it's not
like he was piling up fucking bodies.
It does, yeah. It does
piling
sound
them
like
up.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, he was like
vicious.
Fucking cutting people open to see how their organs work. Had some dark shit.
He was dedicated. He
Yeah,
was dedicated to, the
he
medical
sounds like
experimentation.
a cold, calculating dude. Not a lot of empathy. I don't think he's high on empathy.
So
I don't
yes, it
think.
sounds like he's very low on empathy, very high on I don't know, fastidiousness and
Yeah,
finding out, really exploring medicine and really excelling in that area. But yeah,
but
it's
yeah.
interesting. Well, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it starts off. I like the fact that it starts off. Is that the end? And he's like, yes. He's like, it didn't end the way I thought it would. He said, what did you expect? I was waiting to find out who the beggar really was. I thought as soon as someone was nice to him, he would turn out to be Taberlin the Great. Then he would give them his walking stick and a sack of money and, I don't know, make something magical happen. Willem spoke up. He'd say, whenever you are in danger, knock this stick on the ground and say, stick be quick. And the stick would whirl around and defend them from whoever was attacking them. Willem was lying on his back in the tall grass, too. I didn't think he was really an old beggar. And both of the old beggars in the story are never really old beggars, Simmons said with a hint of accusation in his voice. They're always a witch or a prince or an angel or something. In real life, old beggars are almost always old beggars, I pointed out. But I know what kind of story you two are thinking about. Those are stories we tell other people to entertain them. This story is different. It's one that we tell each other.
Yeah, they
And
wanted a
so,
Disney. They wanted a Disney story about this beggar. They thought the beggar turned into a prince once someone gave him food.
yeah, it's kind of like the complaints about Denna. It's like, hey, she's like supposed to be, Kavos' love interest and supposed to be, have his back. And like she seems like she's got her own thing going on.
Yes, she has her
Yeah.
own thing going on.
Yeah.
She's struggling and she's alone and she's, got a checkered past, to say the least. That's not what you want. You want someone that's a little flatter, huh? Some
Yeah.
little.
Well, I would,
Why does
a
she
good
just follow him
you know,
around?
I get it. They want Kavoth to have a fucking nice little girlfriend that's, helping him along. But he hitched his wagon to someone who's very much like him.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what he would do. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that would make sense for him. He never takes the easy route.
It would, yeah, and it makes sense that their shit wouldn't work because if two people are too similar and too focused on themselves, chances are that's not gonna end up well.
Yeah, they both need. I mean, I think both of their personalities need someone that's going to sit shotgun, not going to drive.
Yeah,
that's kind of how that's going to have to.
Someone's got to be steering. It's got to be a partnership, but someone's still got to have their hand on the wheel. Almost always, in most relationships, there's got to be someone who's controlling, who's driving.
What I have found personally is that temperament is huge. A matching temperament can go a long way. They have that. However, well, it's kind of like, Kavoth and Debbie would never really work either, would it? She's a little too, I think anyone that's as strong-willed as he is or close to that.
Yeah, you're going to have a tough time with Kavoth just because he's got his single-minded mission is to hunt down the Chandrian and kill them. It's going to be tough to have a relationship with that dude. Like, I mean,
yeah.
He's set himself on a path to being a single lonely dude because that's not the kind of life most people are going to be fucking down for.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. It's not only dangerous, it's also he's spending all his time researching, trying to find out the secret societies and all that kind of shit. Where it's like, man, you'd have to really be into it too.
Well,
like, you'd have to be super into that as well.
It's obsessive about something you're not going to be able to share with other people. It's just the two of you. You're not talking about this at the bar with other people.
Which, if we don't know what her mission is, it could be that they have a similar mission that if they were open with each other, then it could work. They could work together and they could be both, pointing in the same direction. Or it could be that they have when you find out what Den is working at, it's at cross purposes. Yeah. So it could just completely blow up. But because they both do seem obsessed with their own particular mission. If they're pointed in the right direction, that could work.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it does feel that way, and the more interesting thing would be if it's at cross purposes, and I think her song hints at that. Now I know it seems like her song she kind of picked up from her.
Yeah, her song though
Uh,
doesn't seem like that's her thing. That seems like it's
yeah, I was. What's her
she's
patron?
doing
Yeah,
that for a purpose, but I don't think her purpose was like the song, the Chandrian. Like that shit's not what she's about. She's about something else. Now it could be like she's after the Amyr or something, and so they would be at cross purposes. Whereas like he's trying to find allies, and if she was hunting down one of the groups that he's looking for as an ally, that would put them at cross purposes. But it doesn't seem like she's working purposely for the Chandrian or something like that.
that would be really interesting if. That would be really interesting if an agent or so of the Amyr offed her family for the greater good, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then that's her revenge story is going against them. So then they are at cross purposes, in which case that would bring a real complicated, one could foresee a real complicated mess in book 3 where things get real heated and people have to make a choice. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And it's tough to figure out without knowing exactly what the hell happened to her, why she's helping on learning magic, and why she's willing to stick with her patron who's, beating on her and shit. Without knowing exactly what's going on with that, it's hard to figure out, where it's going to go in book 3. I mean, there's some things that we have a decent amount of clarity on and where they could lead. It's very difficult with Denna. She's very mysterious.
It's pretty great, that something so pivotal, so important to the story is left in limbo like that. I think it is in terms of staying tuned in to get to book 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To have that not wrapped up, and there's so many things that aren't, but that's such a super important one, especially with what happens between them. Yeah, it gives it more emphasis. Not that it needed more, but yeah.
Yeah. Then they start talking about like the different superstitions and the stereotypes and that kind of stuff, and they talk about what we were talking about, how there is some truth to it. Like Sim has traveled with Dim and they were weird. Basil is from Vent and he's got weird superstitions. Will talks about the Sealedish, they do, so you put the money in their boot and that kind of stuff, which is same thing Chronicler does as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it talks about superstitions and how there are not stereotypes, and how the stereotypes are based on something. And we see that we see that with Rothfuss talking about the King event, King Vasia, the OG King event being a barrow drog. We see it, with the seal dish that Will's talking about here. We see it with the Adim. We obviously get an explanation on why they are, they are the way they are, but there is some truth to the superstition. There's a reason why people say these things about the different groups, which leads you to think, is there a reason that everybody fucking hates the Rue? Is there some truth behind it?
Well, it's interesting. I think it's worth pointing out that I don't know if there's other parts where literally we hear that the Rue were literally hunted down. They basically looked at it as sport, and at least that's the way that
he talks about it too. Like when he snapped at Master Hem when Elodin torched his room, and Hem called him a ravel, and he talked about the systematic slaughter of the Rue.
Yeah, that's right. But his defense,
yeah. So they're pointing it out here again.
Did not Lorne, but I think it was the Chancellor. I think he even said, "Oh, I didn't know that."
Yeah, no, he wasn't familiar with the etymology of the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, so does it, obviously the Rue would be very aware of, they were hunted down and slaughtered, but everybody else looks down on them and shits on them, so it's not going to be, a huge point of conversation.
Yeah, that's interesting though. I mean, guess what you're saying is what was the catalyst, right? Did something happen specifically
Yeah, is it pure
where
bigotry or is there, something else behind it?
yeah, I wonder if it's as simple as like disdain stemmed from I don't know, maybe like Ajax was one of the Rue or something, and then he creates this whole situation because of that cascading effect. They shit on his people from then forward. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that the Ilian is a Ruach, and so these are powerful people, and that they're trying to kill off a powerful group that was traveling in the world. A powerful offshoot of the Ruach, and so maybe that's why they were getting wiped out. Don't know. I mean, there's obviously we get no hint at exactly where the animosity comes from. But it also makes sense that in a world like this, if you're just this traveling troop that you're going around and you're always mixing in with different cultures, that you are always the outsider.
Yeah. Yeah. So
You're
that yeah
always
that, that
not only are you always the outsider, you're always the outsider on someone else's home turf.
yeah I was gonna say you're always sort of not interrupting, but you're always invading people's space,
Yeah.
right? And that always gets people's hackles up, right? I mean, just like we were talking about before, that's sort of human nature. When you have strangers in the area, people get, well, who's this guy? Who's this fucking guy?
Yeah, because it's not like there's obviously a distinction between just like a traveling troupe, where if it's like a traveling troupe of people that are from the same culture and you, that's going to be looked at differently. Then you're just an entertainer. But if you're outsiders, your culture's different. You're just not you're not one of the ones. Like then it could be looked at as like what the fuck's their deal? Why are they coming to our town trying to fucking make money off of us? They're trying to scam us. Like there's some kind of game they're playing here. But you would think though, if they were just constantly being good people, not doing anything wrong, eventually that fear would wear down as they continually travel from culture to culture and people interact with them. You would think like the more people got to know them, the more they'd let their guard down and see, but that's clearly not the case with the Rue.
There is a part here that I don't know if it will be like utilized anywhere else, but he mentions constellations, which is kind of interesting, like particular constellations in the sky. Ewan, or however you say, yeah, Ewan the Hunter, the Crucible, the Young Again Mother, the Fire-Tongued Fox, the Broken Tower. And then they start to just talk about, where would you go if you go anywhere? And then I think they go to he even brings up like the Stormwall Mountains or the Tahl.
Yeah,
Tall and
this is
Walled.
where he
Yeah.
talks about I would go among the tall. They're primitive nomadic people, from what I've heard. Technically speaking, the Edema Rue are nomadic people, I said dryly. I heard a story once that the leaders of their tribes aren't great warriors, they're singers. Their songs can heal the sick and make trees dance. I shrugged. I'd go there and find out if it was true.
Do you think
It's
that
got to be
means the
something up with these people. I think it's got to be similar to the Adem with like their they hold their words,
Mhm.
and it's like a magical power. I think there's something to it, but the fact that they talk about the singers, and the Amyr, the singers, the scythe,
Yeah.
they're the only people that would other than if they're just talking about people that sing songs and they don't want people singing songs because that's how a lot of information is spread. It's got to be one of those two. It's either the tall or they're talking about, just actual singers spreading stories.
Singers isn't capitalized in that part, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah. The I was thinking make the trees dance. So maybe they can make the Cathay drop out of the tree and do like, the Harlem Shuffle.
Yeah, no, he's all popping and locking as soon as they fucking come by.
The stank leg or the meat stick.
The meat stick?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a famous dance move.
It's the stupidest. It is the stupidest.
That's an actual dance move?
Dude, it is the dumbest dance move I've ever seen. It's so stupid. It's like the Macarena, but worse. It's real dumb. It's real dumb.
The meat stick sounds very perverted. The dance to me is it's like you're standing there and just like fucking
not even like
swinging your hips back and forth and doing a little fucking swing back and forth with your meat stick.
It's real dumb. Although fish fans that are hearing me say how dumb it is probably are getting mad at me, but it's so stupid. It's retarded. The song's terrible, the whole thing. But yeah, so maybe that's how you get the Cathay. Maybe what happens is Kvothe goes to Tallenwald, gets himself one of the Tahl. They go find the Cathay, shake him out of that tree. And I don't know. I don't know what they do at that point. Fuck him up. Dance with him.
If Tahl get by Kilvin, he just immediately like breakaway pants off into leotard, fucking dropping down splits. Yeah,
I dig it. He's in the group. So yeah, so the boy band, they probably need people dancing on stage, right? Yeah. It is a boy band, so they need somebody to choreograph and stuff like that. Get some of the Tahl backup singers.
Singers just do-wop. Do.
And then
everybody just starts like uncontrollably like, this song sucks, but I don't know. Like I just feel the urge to dance.
That's like, how good the backup
like my arms are like they're popping and locking and I can't control it.
They literally have the crowd doing the robot.
Yeah.
Like robotically.
Yeah. Robotically robots.
I love it. This is good. This is another layer to the boy band theory. I love it. This is good stuff.
Yeah, you got to bring in some Tahl background singers. Fucking they're perfect hype man. They're way better than old Clock dude.
Flavor Flav?
Yeah.
Or the French, as the French say, Flav Flav?
Yeah. But yeah, I also like, Willem says he would go to the Fane court, and Sim's like, you can't pick that. And it's like, Kvothe, if Kvothe can go to a singing tree, I can go to the Fane and dance with Umbrella, with Fane women. The Tahl is real, Simon protested. Fairy stories are for drunks, half-wits, and children.
So we get a little bit of Sim's closed-mindedness, right, to the world.
He's got a lot of animosity towards the Fane realm. It's not just like, it's stupid, it doesn't exist. Like, he's like heated about like that anybody would even suggest that it exists.
I like Umbrella, huh?
Who's that?
She sounds like she's the famed Shandy of the Fane world, man.
Yeah. Oh,
she
man.
Is the stripper.
Oh, what a tragedy if Shanda is actually Umbrella. And fuck Will finds out. He's going to be heartbroken.
Umbrella. I wonder if that was an exotic dancer at Rothfuss's strip club there.
It's going to be played by Rihanna.
Okay.
Their
I'll take
Umbrella
that.
song.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. She'll do that on stage. And the Fae. I wonder what a strip club in the Fae is. Probably looks dope, right?
Yeah, you would hope, like, you would think that they would, like, have that shit down, like, super on point. Like, they're next level.
Especially if, like, sex is their thing, right? I mean, if maybe Florian's, like, in the back running the show, right? Maybe that's her thing. Maybe that's what Florian's doing most of the time is she's running an exotic, what do you call a strip club other than a strip club?
It could go the other way, though. Florian running the strip club, and they're all just doing jazz hands.
It's just the implication of their special sexual
everybody's just misinterpreting what the hell's going on. She's like, do crazy hands, and they're just like start doing jazz hands. Like, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, go to the customers and do, crazy leg hands.
Crazy leg hands. I like it. There's getting some more layers to the Fae here. Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely like they. It's weird that they don't have strip clubs in this story as much as we talk about them.
Yeah.
Huge oversight. Huge oversight by Rothfuss.
I have to agree with you on that. Well, what I think he's doing is like what he did with the Adem, and what he's doing here with the Fae is he's layering it in slowly. Book 3 is all strip club.
Shandy's Dance, Florian. Yep.
It's all strip club.
All strip clubs and Jack in the Box.
Yeah. Boy band. It's all just layered. It's getting layered to that point.
Maybe the Jack in the Boxes are like those, Taco Bell KFCs where it's a Jack in the Box / strip club.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cross promotion. I like it.
Yeah, there's a Taco Bell / Long John Silver's by me.
What a combo.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Get you some fish tacos.
Get your quesadillas and some hush puppies, huh?
Yeah.
Nothing like dipping a quesadilla in a tartar sauce. That's a good combo.
Delicious.
Cinnamon twists and and tartar sauce and cocktail sauce. Yeah, that's a combo. So big moment here at the end of this chapter. Sim made a non-committal shrug, and I was about to ask him something else. Oh, sorry, I read the wrong part. Just a second, Simmons started to undo his pants as he moved toward the trees. What do you think he was doing there?
Sounds like he was going to go play a little pocket pool. He got thinking about that umbrella and got all worked up. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's another one of the, obviously it's huge clue towards the biggest mystery for book 3 on the bathroom breaks. That could be a bathroom break. He is undoing his pants, but it also could be, their kids probably getting, narbs all the time. And so he, could be just working one out.
So he's wasted, laying on the ground, talking to his buddies about where they would go, and he got a narb. Although it's interesting, if you read this out of context, one of the next sentences, he made a sharp motion with his hand, shaking his head.
Yeah. Yeah. See? So yeah, I gotta do one of these. Given the jerk motion.
Yeah, I gotta take care of this. Sorry.
He did the jerk with the throw it in their face move. Like, sorry guys.
Oh, who's that character from Hangover? That was the best. Chan,
yeah. Chan or Chow. Chan. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, Professor Chow. No. Yeah, whatever his name was. I can't remember. But yeah, that was great though.
About. Yeah. That's I think that's all I had for that chapter though.
Yeah, the only other piece we get there is that when Sim brings up his family and he's talking about how rough his life is. I haven't been anywhere really. I only came to the university because after my brothers inherit, my sister gets her dowry. There isn't going to be much left for me except for my family name. And Kavos starts to ask him about it. Will shuts him up and is like, "Yeah, I'll tell you later. Don't ask him about his family." So we get a little bit of more backstory on Sim, that he's a Duke's son, which we'll come to in the very beginning of the next chapter. But it shows that it's not all sunshine and rainbows for the rich noble class. They still are human beings that have shit parents and shitty fucking circumstances.
Yeah, it's funny
because gets a little bit of that experience, coming up here.
When we just kind of talked about Kavos' closed-mindedness to that when he was at the whatever place that Ambrose lives at, whatever, something Golden Pony or some shit.
Yeah.
Golden Shower Pony
Yeah.
Shower. Where he
Golden
talks
Shower
about
Pony Show.
where he talks about whatever rich people talk about beating the servants or something else, and it's like, dude, like, but it's in a way it's understandable. He's young, doesn't have money, so he's got disdain for people with money. I mean, I remember being that person, so I get it. But yeah, we get here where he starts to realize it's not like that for everybody. You can still have shitty circumstances, even though you don't have to worry about money. He's got other pressures that suck, because like he doesn't even see his family. But we'll talk about the next little chapter here.
Yeah, so chapter 39 is titled Contradictions. In this chapter, we learn about Sim's family life, and the boys go to the library and settle their bets. Sim and Kvothe both find numerous books supporting their theories about the Greystones, agree to a draw. Kvothe and Will find contradictory information for their bet and decide to go see Puppet in order to settle the matter. So we learn at the very beginning Will's explaining why you don't want to ask about Sim's family, and he's like, the problem's his father. Sim's father holds a duchy in Aetor. Good land, but hold on, I interrupted. Our little Sim's father is a duke? Little Sim, Willem said dryly, is 3 years older than you and 2 inches taller. Which duchy, I asked, and he's not that much taller. It's kind of like you with, fucking can't accept how short you are.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
Dalinir, Willem said, which I like just because of the reading Stormlight Archives, and it's very similar to a great character in that book.
Didn't know that.
Which you haven't got to yet, yeah. No. But he's very early on. It's one of the main characters. But yeah, Dalinir Kholin, spelled differently, but it's almost the same exact name. Dalinar instead of Dalinir. But yeah, Dalinir, but you know how it is. Noble blood from Aetor. Small wonder he does not speak of it. Oh, come on, I chided, gesturing to the students filling the streets around us. The university has the most open-minded atmosphere since the church burned Calptina to the ground. I notice you don't make any loud announcement that you're a Demaru. I bristled. Are you implying I'm embarrassed? I'm saying you make no loud announcement, Will said calmly, giving me a steady look. Neither does Simon. I imagine you both have your reasons. Will's, he like I said, he plays the role of the audience a lot in saying the things that people, need to hear. He's much more in tune with all of his friends, and he knows their deep secrets. He knows, what issues not to touch on. So he plays referee a lot of times with his friends, and keeps them on track.
Yeah, he's the quiet dude in the corner that doesn't miss things.
Yeah.
And when he gets involved, he's very good at calming down matters. And it actually kind of felt like I kind of felt like is Kvothe a little hungover here? Because it didn't take much for him to not fly off the handle, but to take offense when it was just he's pointing out you guys are similar in this way. You're not going out of your way to make it known that you're a Demaru. You're not announcing it everywhere, and neither is Sim. And they're both of you have your reasons. He's trying to build that bridge between the two so he can understand it, which he does.
Sim's dad kind of sounds like a super dope dude.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's like Williams shrugged his, after Kvothe's like, hey, being in the university is much better than, being some, fucking toady that's just going around glad-handing with politicians, which his dad wanted him to do, and be a diplomat. And Willem shrugged. He says, his tuition is paid, his allowance continue. He paused to wave at someone on the other side of the courtyard, but Simon does not go home, not even for a brief visit. Sim's father likes to hunt, fight, drink, and lynch. I suspect our gentle bookish Sim was probably not given the love a clever son deserves. I mean, his dad kind of sounds fucking dope right there. I mean, that's a dope description. He likes to hunt, fight, drink, and winch. Like, all right, sign me up. Let me hang out with this dude.
It does sound kind of fun.
Sim and Ambrose can go write their fucking poetry, and let me hang out with the fucking party here.
Now, it is interesting, though. Yeah, like Sim chose what he wanted to do, what he enjoys doing, and he's happy. And then there's this, there's this part of it that clearly is something that he doesn't talk about, doesn't really visit.
His dad kind of sounds like Dan.
Yeah, I guess a little bit.
Like
and he actually has power and influence, so that's going to build
probably a smarter Dan, but a Dan-esque type. I bet you Sim's dad would get along much better with Dan than he does his own son.
Yeah, it seems like it. Well, and then he's got his other sons that are doing what he wants them to do, what he wants them to do. And he seems like that just speaks to, or it sort of gives the impression that, and it's a shitty thing for a father to do, but basically, I chose this path for you. You do what I say, and we can be cool. And if not, go fuck yourself. And maybe it's not that hardcore, but it is to at least to some degree. I mean, he can't even visit, his parents. So
it's good to have this in there, just because you could fall into the trap because Kavoth's poor and the Rue are shat on so much. You could turn this into a story where it's all the rich people are just awful people, and they just don't get it. They don't live the same life, and you could make that boring fucking story where people with affluence are just evil.
Yeah,
but this he again builds nuance into the story where the affluent have their own problems, their own different issues, and so it's not just happy-go-lucky for them. Even for a absurdly happy-go-lucky dude, he's still got the shit in his closet that that's just his personality. That's not his life.
Well, it's a great character. It's a perfect character to have this trait in his background, because he is happy-go-lucky. So he doesn't really have it affect him, but deep down it does affect him.
Yeah, and he's not like at the university because this was his passion. It was just like, it's better than the other options. It's not like he's funny. Loving every minute of it.
Yeah, that's the funny thing that we didn't really touch on that from the previous chapter when they talk about it, or somewhat recently, where Sim's like, well, basically he came here not really with intention. It's like, well, what else am I going to do? I'm not going to do these things that my father wants me to do, so at least go here and see, what this will have for me. And he's finding himself, but he finds Fella, right? So
yeah,
that seems to have been worth it.
Yeah. Hit a home run, with his eyes closed.
And he got those boots that everybody keeps talking about.
Yeah, he got them dope-ass boots. Like, that's really, what's the important thing. Hobnail, dope-ass boots, those will last forever.
Yeah, they keep talking about them boots. But it again builds out the world a little bit further.
And it builds out the secondary characters. I mean, there's a past, a history to them. It shows, because there is, it is so focused on Kavoth that, and you're not going to get like deep backgrounds to them, but it shows that there is a history, there is some background, there is some reasons to their personalities. And it's just, we don't know all the information for all these characters. But I think Rothfuss has probably got, the background story for all these characters. I think he knows in his head, where these guys came from, who they are. Because these are characters with distinct personalities and differences. And most of them are pretty complex. They're not one-note characters. They're not boring. They're not, there's not someone who is just like this moral, straight and narrow, always good, or just always evil. There's nuance to the characters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quality storytelling.
But yeah, then they go into the library and they go to settle their bets. And so their bets were he bet Sim about what the true meaning of the Greystones is. Sim says they're pagan relics. Kavos says that they are. What does he say? He basically described them as like lucky or
road
old
markers or
yeah. I mean his thing is they weren't pagan relics that they were lucky. They were good spots, not something to look down on. So
yeah, they mark like trade routes and whatnot.
Yeah. And so they go and look. Sim had apparently gone to Puppet to find the books. So Puppet led him to. I love the fact that like Sim just goes to Puppet and it's like, hey, I need books on Greystones. And he goes and collects books and doesn't even read them. He doesn't even skim them. And like he just gets a stack of books from Puppet, comes back. Kavoth's got his books. And then Sim comes back with, more books than Kavoth, but some of the books back Kavoth's position.
Yeah.
So like he's going and finding books just completely blindly, not trying to make sure that he's going to come out ahead. So it backfires on him. But I love that aspect of it where he's like, it's like I couldn't help but laugh. Didn't you read these before you brought them here? In an hour? Give me a laugh. Not likely. I just used a scriv. No, you didn't. You asked Puppet, didn't you?
Yeah, then he's caught in his little feeble lie.
Yeah, this is one part that's real out of character because normally he's really good at lying, and this is one of the few times where he lies and he gets caught in it.
Sim?
Yeah, Sim's normally the best liar in the story.
No, he's like a child trying to lie. It's immediately noticeable.
Yeah,
this dude has no poker face whatsoever.
Look profoundly guilty.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect way to describe him lying.
Yeah. I like so when he does read liar. He does read one part that's like really interesting and then he's like, whatever, just throws the book away. It's like, well, dude, no, what was the rest of that? And it's like the most important part that they got. It was the part that I was talking about last chapter or 2 chapters ago with the doorway, right?
Yeah, Sim read the locals refer to it as a doorpost. While spring and summer pageants involve decorating and dancing around the stone, parents forbid their children from spending time near it when the moon is full. One well-respected and otherwise reasonable old man claimed, Simon broke off reading. Whatever, he said disgustedly and moved to close the book. Claimed what? Willem asked, his curiosity piqued. Simon rolled his eyes and continued reading. Claimed at certain times men could pass through the stone doors into the fair land where Felurian herself abides, loving and destroying men with her embrace, which is likely accurate.
Yeah, I mean that's huge, and it gives us a few things too, because when you're talking about, you talked about that early on, where parents forbid their children spending time near it when the moon is full. So that's huge to tell us about that time element, why this does go in there, but you can't just walk through whenever you want.
Yeah,
it's not just an open entryway. So yeah, that's huge. And it's funny to me that Sims just like was about to close it and just get rid of it when they're learning something that's really key. But again, what's Simmons' reaction? Or Will says, "Oh, interesting," and then Sim's like, "No, it isn't. It's childish, superstitious bunk." And none of this is getting us any closer to deciding who is right. So he's not paying attention at all to what is extraordinarily interesting historical thing to realize. Instead, he's just like, this is bullshit. Hogwash.
Yeah. And so they end up deciding, they both like came out to like both had 9 books in his favor and Sim had 8 in his. And so, and a few were mixed. And so they called their bet a draw, and then it turns out they both come back with just one book for Kavoth and Willem's bet. And their bet, again, was Will bet that the head of the Aetern Empire, Nalto, disbanded the Amyr and ruled the Amyr, or whatever was the leader of the Amyr. And Kavoth was saying that it was the priests, that the Tehlin church was in charge. And so they go and it's like, here, I have the copy of the proclamation which disbanded the Amyr. He opened to a marked page and began to read. Their actions will henceforth be held in account by the laws of the Empire. No member of the order shall presume to take upon themselves the right to hear a case, nor to pass judgment in court. He looked up smugly. See, if they had their adjudicating powers revoked, then they must have had some to begin with. So it stands to reason that they were part of the Aetern bureaucracy. Actually, I said apologetically. It sounded real douchey. Kind of reminded me of you there. But yeah, actually, I said apologetically. The church has always had their judiciary powers in Aetern. I held up one of my 2 books. It's funny you should bring the Alpura Prolicia Amyr. I brought it too. The decree itself was issued by the church. Willem's expression darkened. No, it wasn't. It was listed here as Emperor Nalto's 63rd decree. Puzzled, we compared our 2 books and found them directly contradictory. Well, I guess those cancel each other out, Sim said. What else have you guys got? This is Feltimi Reus, The Lights of History, Willem grumbled. It's definitive. I didn't think I would need any further proof. Doesn't this bother either of you? I thumped the 2 contradictory books with a knuckle. These shouldn't be saying different things. We just read 20 books saying different things, Simon pointed out. Why would I have a problem with 2 more? And so then Kavoth points out that, this isn't just some speculative thing where it's like there's not a clear right or wrong. This is a decree. This is just like a factual who disbanded them.
It's historical record.
And so you have these 2 historians, these 2 guys that are very well respected for being able to find this kind of information and give clarity to it, and for them to be looking at the same exact decree, but the decrees say contradictory things. That should not be the case.
It's a really cool thing that Rothfuss does here in this chapter is first presenting to us what would be speculative. And that was actually my note before even we got to that part of the chapter, which is that the purpose of the Greystones, the history of the Greystones is speculative, or could be speculative, because they don't have an exact reasoning in the books. And then you go to something that should not be speculative and should be historical record, but yet they're finding the contradiction within it. So the fact that he pitted those 2 and then led us with the first one, which is, again, you're not going to find the direct reasoning, but then also the reasoning behind the Greystones isn't as important. Well, in a way it isn't, because with the Amyr, we're talking about something that has real legitimate power within the world.
And the Greystones predate their history recordings.
Yeah.
And this event doesn't. This is in their more recent history. This would be like, information just a couple hundred, like the Founding Fathers era.
Well, and that's one of the biggest things that comes out about Gibeah, right? Is the fact that it's the timeline. It's the fact that, if this was found out at this time, then that means there were allies amongst the Amyr, which means, and he has to piece it all together and does a great job, like little detective work, which pointing out that means they could still be existing now because of how recent that was, with Gibeah and all that.
Yeah, it's when you think about it, like if you look back at like the Founding Fathers and the Articles of Confederation, then moving to the Constitution, you have the steps that were taken, you have their reasoning, you have like the shady shit that went down. Like, you have the history behind it, and it's not there is some speculative aspects to it, but there are facts. There are known facts. This shit, like with the Amyr, there's just almost nothing factual known about the Amyr. There's stories about the Amyr, there's different things, but there's not hard, concrete facts that are easily verifiable, even to the point of like the creation of them and the disbanding of them. That is not concrete, hard information that anybody can just readily access. And that should be. It's not that far. It's not far enough back for that information to not be easily accessible.
Yeah, I was going to say that's why it's so suspicious. There should be. And Will speaks with authority about his opinion. Kvothe speaks with authority about his. And you would imagine that seems to be what's happening in their world, is that there's this, people think they know, yet clearly there's things being pruned in the archives.
Yeah, like, I mean, in 300 years, there's not a single book written by someone who was a member of the Amyr. They didn't write a single book.
And that's the interesting thing that also came out at the end of the chapter is they basically bring up, consideration of the source material, right? Well, is Feltemi Reese the, Kvothe talks about Gregor the Lesser, how he's a windbag and a bigot, but he's the best historian of his age. And Feltemi Reese isn't nearly the historian, but he's twice the scholar Gregor was, and scrupulous about his facts. So they should both be reliable, historians. Their information that they're giving should be reliable. And then they confirm, or the result is this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Why would these be contradictory on an actual fact? So a lot comes out of that. It's like, did they change the books? Or is one of these guys Amyr? Who knows? I mean, the speculation comes out of it, and it's really cool because we're riding along with them, in this sort of research thing, which is cool because it goes right into let's go to an authority, which happens to be Puppet.
Yeah, who turns out to be a pretty good authority on it. Or at least they accept what he has to say without much question.
He's pretty convincing. I mean, the idea that somebody can be like, "Oh, what book were you looking for?" Yeah, that's in this place exactly. He knows exactly like the row and where it is. It's like, dude, this dude's mind is nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a savant, clearly.
Yeah.
All right, so chapter 40 is titled Puppet. Long-awaited Puppet chapter. In this chapter, we finally meet the very eccentric Puppet, and he puts on a marionette show, and he analyzes the shit out of Kvothe and settles their bet.
It's great. Puppet's awesome. I love it. The way the chapter starts is really funny for me to be like in Kvothe's shoes. I do not react well when people overemphasize the way I should be, projecting myself. Like they prep him
clearly
so
making it very clear that they don't want you to embarrass them.
Yeah.
And like, they expect you, if they don't give you a prep, that they expect that you will embarrass them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hilarious. Well, and I love that he goes through this whole thing. The most important thing is to be polite. And then he goes, don't patronize him. He's a bit odd, but he's not an idiot. And then ends with, just treat him like you would anyone else. What the fuck, man?
Yeah,
leave me alone then.
Except polite. Except polite, I said sarcastically, tiring of the litany of advice. Exactly, said Sim seriously.
What the fuck,
like, be yourself. Just treat them how you would normally treat people, except for, don't be you.
Yeah, I mean, it just gets to the point where it's like, I got it, dude. I'm not an idiot. So you clearly think I'm a complete jackass. Like, I need to be coached into how to act when I go into this situation. Now, granted, they have seen Kvothe, overstep his bounds with the way he talks on occasion. But, a reminder here, like, say it once, twice is enough. They just it's the way Kvothe described it. It seems like they were really layering it on, or Simmons really layering it on.
Yeah, and then they get there, and then we find out Puppet lives there. He's not just in a reading nook. This is where he lives. He lives at the archives. So
I
he
like
is
the
definitely he's a big reader.
I like the yeah, putting it mildly. I like the description as they get to where, because they describe just how old. I mean, sort of reiterating what we already know, but giving it a little bit more character in terms of the archives. Like centuries of use had worn down the stone, making the stairs look as bowed as heavy laden shelves. As we started down, the shadows made the steps look smooth and dark and edgeless, like an abandoned riverbed worn from the rock. And then from all that, how are you sure he's going to be there? And then I don't think he leaves his chambers very much, and that's where it's like, wait, he fucking lives here, like 3 stories down in this old cavern of a library. It's pretty wild to consider.
Yeah,
Oh
and
yeah, and then you get it again. Just don't do anything to upset him. Has to say it again.
Yeah. Then like the door opens a crack and he throws it open wide, and he's standing in the doorway, taller than any of them.
So
the sleeves of his black robe billowed strikingly in the breeze of the opening door. He stared at us haughtily for a moment, then looked puzzled and brought a hand to touch the side of his head. "Wait, I've forgotten my hood," he said, kicked the door closed. Odd as his brief appearance had been, I'd noticed something more disturbing. "Burned body of God," I whispered. "He's got candles in there. Does Lauren know?" Simon opened his mouth to answer when the door was thrown wide again. Puppet filled the doorway, his dark robe striking against the warm candlelight behind him. He was hooded now, with his arms upraised. The long sleeves of his robe caught the inrush of air and billowed impressively. The same rush of air caught his hood and blew it partway off his head. "Damn," he said in a distracted voice. Hood settled half on, half off his head, partially covering one eye. He kicked the door shut again. "Would you mind knocking again? Doesn't seem quite right otherwise." Obediently, Willem stepped back up to the door and knocked once, twice, and then the door swung open, and we were confronted with a looming figure in a dark robe. His cowled hood shadowed his face. The long sleeves of his robe stirred in the wind. "Who calls on Taborlin the Great?" Puppet intoned, his voice resonant, but slightly muted by the deep hood. A pointed hand dramatically. "You, Simon." There was a pause, and his voice lost its dramatic resonance. "I've seen you already today, haven't I?" I like that aspect. I also want to point out there is a lot of people that think Taborlin could also be Haliax, that Taborlin could be Lanre, and this hooded figure with his face, his cowled hood shadowed his face, and then who calls on Taborlin the Great. So it could be possibly that the stories of Taborlin are the stories of Lanre, and Taborlin eventually, Lanre eventually became Haliax. It could be. I don't think that's the case, but I think these are some of the reasons why some people think Taborlin is Haliax.
The Taborlin stories, though, they don't describe his face as not having a face.
No,
right?
They don't describe him like Haliax, but it could be that they're describing Lanre. And then,
does the
but
timeline
he's
work
also
for that?
he's obviously a powerful namer, knows the
Yeah.
name of all things. Like he's a very powerful figure. So maybe Taborlin is like a combination of Lyra and Lanre. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that Taborlin is another character. I think he's his own character, and he might even be mythological. He might not even be a real character. But there are people. I'm just bringing it up because there are people that think Taborlin is Haliax, and so that this is an example of one of the reasons why that this theory comes up.
Does the timeline work out to where?
No clue, because we don't know the timeline of Taborlin.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
But Taborlin is mixed in with the Chandrian. Like the first story we hear about Taborlin is the Blue Flames and the Chandrian.
Yeah, but
it's him against the
The cloak of, what is it? Cloak of
no particular colors.
Yeah, so that's his thing. That doesn't get repeated with anybody with the Chandrian. You know what I mean? There's certain
No,
things about Tamerlane that don't get insinuated when it comes to the Chandrian. You would think that's
no,
meaningful. I mean, to me, that's meaningful.
yeah, yeah. It's there's not strong evidence that Tamerlane there's not like things where people. There's a much more stronger evidence for like Sciapi and Scarpi than there is for Tamerlane being Lanre or Haliax or something like that,
Yeah, the
or even
connections,
any
man.
other character. There's not, there's people that think a Loden is Tamerlane. So, but I think
Mm.
it's just one of those things where in this story, when you have this much time to speculate on it, you start getting, every character is someone else.
Yeah, well, everybody's
And,
tailored,
and, and
right?
that is definitely not going to be the case. There's going to be some characters are likely multiple people or are people in hiding or secretly someone else, but it's not going to be every character.
Yeah, that's pretty hacky.
Yeah.
It seems. I mean, in a way, it's almost like
But it's
poetic
like
and
the third,
clever.
yeah.
But
I mean, you get to the point where it'd be like third book is like, holy shit, that guy's that guy. Oh shit, that guy's that guy. Oh
yeah,
man, that guy. And no, well
after a
then you
while, it's
just
like it
you
was
lose.
stupid. Yeah,
It's like this. Yeah, it's just become stupid.
yeah.
So I'd be surprised if Taberlin is an integral figure in the third books, but I bring it up because that is one of the things people point to.
What do you make of the candles? Like,
I,
does
I
Lauren know? Does Lauren approve?
there's no way Lauren does not know.
Well,
Like
that's what
he
I was
would know
thinking.
the living
So,
conditions of someone who lives in the archives. He just obviously trusts.
so he trusts him, or the candles aren't actually flammable. There's something else going on. There's like maybe it's, I don't know. They're not simple.
Yeah, I don't
They're
get
not
any.
sympathy lamps
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he
I don't
said
get
they're
any impression
candles.
that they're not actual flames, but I just think it just shows that Lauren obviously has immense trust in Puppet, or that Puppet is similar in the could also hint that Puppet is more like an Elodin type figure where it's like, man, what are you gonna fucking do? Can't fuck with
Yeah,
this dude.
yeah. It's interesting because it's left sort of un unanswered. It's the questions brought up, but then it's not really addressed. So it does.
And and they also talk about like he's got a window in his
Yeah,
room, which when you look at the under thing and the fact that his room's got a window, obviously this shit was above ground at one time.
yeah,
There's no reason to have a window for underground unless like the city was underground and that window looks at underground stuff in that city. So I mean, it could be a window that looks out over the under thing, and he's able to see into the under thing. But it's got to be one of those two things. Either this place is at one time was above ground, which if that's the case, then that lends a lot of credence towards the fact that the archives look like a giant greystone, and it could be like a giant barrow, like it's a giant tomb,
hmm
so that they buried the lower levels were all buried underground, and it was turned into a giant barrow, or that window's looking into like the under thing.
yeah. It made me think the same thing when it was brought up about because Kavoth's like, I couldn't even imagine that there's a window here. There's curtains, but they're drawn. So the idea that there's a window, it's like it sort of puts him on his heels and makes it a little bit even more unsettling. Everything that's going on, this whole introduction is a little odd, right, for Kavoth. But then to also have that, but then on top of it, yeah, it made me think of the under thing because why have all the rooms with all those? I mean, clearly those were rooms that were used for something at some point. They're not anymore, right? And it seems like it was a very long time ago.
I
So
also
there's
I
clear
also
transitions
like
that happened around here.
Puppet's so great. Like he's very similar to Loden and Ari as far as the eccentric qualities. Like I don't know you. A pause. Who are you? I'm Kavoth. You seem so certain of it, he said, looking at me intently.
Yes.
Another pause.
Great.
They call
It's a
me
great line.
Puppet. Who is they? Who are they? He corrected, raising a finger. I smiled. Who are they then? Who were they then? Who are they now? I clarified, my smile growing wider. Puppet mirrored my smile in a distracted way and made a vague gesture with one hand. You know them. People. He continued to stare at me the same way I might examine an interesting stone or a type of leaf I've never seen before. What do you call yourself? I asked. He seemed a little surprised, and his eyes focused on me in a more ordinary way. That would be telling, I suspect, he said with a touch of reproach. He glanced at the silent Willem and Sim. You should come in now. He turned and walked inside. It's like a great initial reaction of like just setting the stage of, yeah, this dude's fucking different.
He first of all, Kavoth does a great job playing back and forth with him, but also he it does seem like in a way he looks into him as a Loden does.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so he definitely has qualities similar. And I was going to say, as soon as you brought it up, it made me think of his seeing quality. It seems like there's a sleeping mind thing going on, and that's what he's trying to tell Kavoth. It's like, dude, stop. He kind of is going along the lines of stop grabbing my tits, in a way of the way he's talking, where it's like, dude, you're trying too hard. Stop looking. Instead, see.
Yes. He seems a lot like the old hermit that talks to Jax in Hespe's story. That is a seer. He's able to see to the truth of matters.
Yeah, he definitely seems to have that quality. I mean, especially with, it's not just Kavoth, it's everybody in the room throughout this scene. He's seeing all of it.
Yeah.
Just the littlest. He's extraordinarily perceptive.
Yeah, and the characters that we see that are like that, I mean, Scarpy's like that, Ari's like that, Elodin's like that, Puppet, the Hermit in Iax's story is like that. So there are certain characters that seem to be seers. They see the truth of the world.
What's really interesting is Kavoth has those abilities.
Yeah.
Right? He has them to a great degree. He's probably not going to think. He thinks it's like, oh, well, I've developed this because of my stage training. You know what I mean? Because he looks at everything like an actor, and so he watches Devi. We get it all the time with Devi, watching for like what she does, right?
He seems to accidentally stumble upon these things, whereas they seem to understand what they're doing. With him, it seems to be an accident, like when he calls the horse like One Sock or whatever, or he names Ari, and Elodin asks him about it, and Elodin's like, why'd you name her Ari? And he's like, it means sunshine. And he's like, where did you hear that? And he's like, he's trying to think of where he heard that, and he had no fucking clue.
Where are you talking about?
When I'm saying like Kavoth with his name, his ability to name and see things, it's very much accidental. Like with One Sock, or when he names Ari, and Elodin asks him like, where did you come up with Ari? He's like, it means sunshine, and then he tries to think of the language that it came up in, and he can't figure it out.
Yeah, well, and with the One Sock, he's even wrong.
Yeah,
he's wrong. Yeah,
he thought he named it something else. Yeah, he thought he named it like Twilight or something like that.
Yeah, and he was totally on. Yeah, what I was saying a moment ago in terms of the fact that he sees this, I would imagine, or I would perceive that he would credit to his stage training, when I think what you're describing there is that it's intuitive, right? It's intuit in his own abilities. I think, again, that might tie into his lineage, and the fact that we talked about before how he can almost virtually do everything, and he has these abilities that seem to be innate, and not as Coat, but as Kavoth. And this is another one that he has. He just needs to, he needs to cultivate it, I guess.
Yeah, and we get another one. It's kind of similar to Trappist. Like I don't realize. Like I always think of Trappist as much older than he is, and I always think of Puppet as much younger than he is. Like where it's like I realized he was older than I thought. His face was smooth and unlined, but his hair was pure white and thin on top. Like so he's much older than anytime I think of Puppet, I don't think of him as being like some white-haired, balding dude. I don't that's not how I picture him.
That's funny. I do. I picture him as like middle aged.
Well, the white hair makes him sound much older.
No, but I mean, just like in my mind. Obviously, the
Yeah.
introduction, he doesn't act. He doesn't act that way, and he's playing
He
a little
acts
dress up
it
game.
yeah, it's because he acts like a little kid. I think of him as like just a younger dude, like our age type of dude, like in his, 30s, 40s, that type of thing. I don't think of him as like a white-haired older dude.
Well, I have a lot of gray hair. What are you trying to say?
Yeah, you're old as shit, though.
I'm younger than you.
Well, you're super old. I'm young though.
Okay.
Age is a feeling and a look.
Oh, a feeling and a look.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you're
it's a
old
good
as
thing.
dirt, and
It's a good thing
I'm
you
super
threw in
young.
that second part.
But yeah, then it gets into like he sees Puppet, his why he's got the name Puppet. He sees all the little marionette dolls all laying around, and Puppet like looks at him, and he grabs just like a block, like a marionette block, and just starts carving, like staring at Kavoth, starts carving it. And eventually he carves like a little miniature marionette Kavoth.
So I was just thinking, man, what a great way to put someone you just met at ease.
Oh,
Right.
dude, you walk into a room and they got a bunch of marionettes all over the place. You're gonna feel real comfortable in that room.
Well, and then you literally just staring at you and whittling your face into a piece
Yeah.
of wood. You just met this dude. Like it's rather uncomfortable.
Not only like he does it in like, a minute, and like carves like a perfect replica of you. like
That's pretty wild.
what the fuck is going on in this place?
Yeah, and you're in
But
like a cavern in a library. The whole thing is pretty wild.
you would think Kavoth would take it. What's funny is like how well he takes Ari and Puppet versus how he does not take Elodin in that same way at all. Even though they're all very similar, but he's
Yeah,
much more accepting of Puppet and Ari.
it's true. It's an interesting thing about Kavoth because he is an artist and he does have that side, and he has described before in relation to Ari, I believe the way he described it is he sort of has a or a soft spot for almost like weak people or someone who's in dire straits. I don't know how exactly to put it. So it's an interesting aspect to him because outside of that, he's kind of very straightforward and even judgmental towards a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the big differentiating factor is like Elodin's in a position of power, and so that's what shifts his view of Elodin versus Ari or Puppet. They're
Well, I
not
guess with
they don't come off as like people in positions of power, even though eventually he's like, yes sir and Puppet.
well with Puppet also though, there's the preamble. It's, hey, be careful around this guy, and he's been hearing about him for forever. And I mean, just before that, it's finally like, am I ever going to meet this dude? So there is that whole preamble and leading up to it. With Ari, it seems like he found her when he was lonely. He was just up there practicing, and then found this girl, then tried to keep her around because she'd run off if he said anything. So the introductions have been different with all three as well.
I like to the when Puppet is like, does he always look like this? Puppet asked Willem and Simon. A small drift of pale wood shavings had gathered around his hands. Mostly, Willem said. Like what? Simon asked. Like he's just thought through his next 3 moves of a game of Tyranny and figured out how he's going to beat you. Puppet took another long look at my face and shaved another thin strip of wood away. It's rather irritating, really. Willem barked a laugh. That's his thinking face, Puppet. He wears it a lot, but not all the time. What's Tyranny? Simon asked. A thinker, Puppet mused. What are you thinking now? Thinking you must be a careful watcher of people, Puppet, I said politely. Puppet snorted without looking up. What use is care? What good is watching, for that matter? People are forever watching things. They should be seen. I see things I look at. I am a seer. Which is, it has special importance to him. Because he's not saying that as, metaphorically. He's saying I am a legit Amyr.
Yes, and I think again what he's going towards is that sleeping mind type of thing, but in his viewpoint of what it represents is to actually see what you're looking at.
Yeah, I think he's talking about it in the same way Elodin would talk about it.
Like, to understand something. Right?
Not in the school ranks, but in the original meanings of these words. Yeah. When we would call someone an Amyr, it meant something. It wasn't just a rank in the school. It was a legit ranking. And so I think he sees it that way. 'Cause, and he brings it up to him when he's like, what is something you are, you will be, or, something you are, you aren't, or you will be. And he's like, an Amyr.
Yeah, it's and even it's great because Simmons like Kavoth is actually a Raylar. He's like, no, Puppet's like hardly. You might be a seer.
He's not even an
but
Amyr.
Not yet. Yeah, now you are a looker. You'll be a true Amyr at some point if you learn to relax. Which there's a couple of points there that I thought that were pretty funny, and that again that if you learn to relax, to me mirrors the sleeping mind. Right? Stop trying to grab at my tits type thing. At least that's kind of what it sort of hinted at to me. So it made me think of, but
yeah, so again, just to reiterate, like Amyr means seer, R'hllor means speaker, Eltha we don't know the name of yet. But these are clearly more meaningful when you're talking about like someone who's got a grasp of actual power, like an Elodin or a Puppet. Like it is something more meaningful than just a rank in the school.
So this kind of speaks back to what Elodin was talking about with the way the school used to be versus what it is now.
Yeah.
They just carry these names on as their ranking. Like you prove
and he reiterates,
you move up.
Yep, and he reiterates that fact when Fella comes up to, make her stone ring. When he talks about
I'd almost put it on one hand versus the other.
Well, no, not that aspect. Like before, when he's bringing her up, he's like, a long time ago, people came here, to learn secret knowledge, to become, namers, like actual magic. That's what they gave about. Like, if you knew names, you walked around here like a tiny god. It's like that is, long time ago is the way he describes it. But yeah, it's clearly that this is a watered down version of what they used to be. And these names are watered down versions of what they used to be. But Puppet is clearly talking about it in the same way Elodin talks about it.
Yeah, and again, so towards that seeing, it seems like also what Elodin talks about is like really understanding it. Once you understand it, you have power over it. It doesn't seem like Puppet's trying to wield power. He's trying to literally see it for what it really is. He's trying to perceive truth. At least that's what it feels like to me. It's not as much about power. It's more about understanding, which there's power in understanding, obviously. But I don't know. That's kind of what.
Yeah, they're not empty words to him. Like there's meaning behind it. There's something deeper going on with him. And he brings up, like, you get kind of the savant side of his mind when Simmons like, so the the rankings mean, these words Alpha and Relar and Alir, they mean something. And he's like, where, what do the other words mean? It's like, a smart student could figure that out. And he asks him, like, where should I look? And he tells him the book, Ren Falke's Dictum. And then he's like, I'm not familiar with that one. Puppet responded in a distracted voice. It's on the second floor in the southeast corner, second row, second rack, third shelf, right-hand side, red leather binding.
Yeah, it's wild.
Like, when you think about how hard it is to find things in the archives, and this dude's just like, boom, 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 boom. It's right there.
Yeah, it's impressive.
He's got a different mind. There's something different about him. He's not like a normal person. But, and we also get, while all this is going on, while he's talking to them, he's got a marionette of, he carved a marionette of Kavoth, and then he set it up like on a shelf to watch. And then he's putting on a puppet show for Puppet Kavoth. And the puppet is a Tehlin priest. He's got the Book of the Path. And so he's like, the miniature Tehlin priest walks slowly around Puppet's feet. Clutched tightly in one hand was a tiny replica of the Book of the Path, perfectly fashioned right down to the tiny spoked wheel painted on the cover. Three of us watch Puppet pull the strings of the little priest, making it walk back and forth before finally coming to sit on one of Puppet's stocking-clad feet. So then they ask him about the Amyr, and they try to get the bet settled. And then while they're asking about that, he's like, another marionette had joined the show, a young girl in a peasant dress. She approached the Tehlin priest and held out a hand as if trying to give something. No, she was asking him a question. The Tehlin turned his back on her. She laid a timid hand on his arm. He took a haughty step away. This is like the part that lends very much towards what we are seeing with Denna behind, through implications and behind the scenes. She's obviously trying to learn secret magic from her patron, and he is very distant and very guarded, and keeps her, one hand he's checking her with, and keeping her at a distance, and keeping her, begging him for the information, and coming to him. He's playing a game with her, and that's what it seems Puppet is demonstrating here.
Do you think her patron could be a Tehlin priest?
Well, it's like we talked about in that episode. I think that her patron is Braden, and I think this demonstrates that Braden is either part of a religious group, like he could be a Tehlin, he could be a member of the Amyr, or that he's a Machiavellian type and he is manipulating her, and he is playing a role as like a something like a Tehlin priest. Like there's, it could be that the Tehlin priest aspect is metaphorical and it's not an exact figure who he is. It could be like a mender or something along those lines. But I think there is something to the fact that Puppet is doing this show with the Tehlin priest, the Book of the Path. Mm-hmm. I think, but what it's more likely showing is that her patron is mixed up in the, the Tehlin story, the Minda story, the Celatos story. He's mixed up in all this, is what I think it hints at, more than he's like a legit Tehlin priest.
It's super. I mean, it's so great because when he finishes with the Kavoth puppet, he says, "See little wooden Kavoth? See him looking, so intent, so dedicated? He'll look for 100 years, but will he ever see what is in front of him?" And then he does his thing. And yeah, I mean, so it's really great. It's actually even funny what he does with the puppet, and like the way he describes it, or the way that Kavoth describes it. in terms of, I know there's a part where, oh yeah, it's when he finds out that they gambled, and then the puppet looks up at Willem like disapprovingly. It's like, you're not supposed to do that. Don't you know the church frowns on gambling? Just all that, like it. It's really quite entertaining.
Well,
The story within a story situation, even within this scene.
yeah, and before that too, like where he's like there as this marionette show's going on, so like he's like she reaches out to him to ask him a question. He takes a haughty step away, and then they ask him, I was wondering who disbanded them, Emperor Nalto or the church. Still looking, he admonished more gently than before. You need to go chase the wind for a while. You're too serious. It will lead you into trouble. And then the Tehlin suddenly turned on the girl, trembling with rage. It menaced her with the book. She took a startled step backward and stumbled to her knee. And then he says, the church disbanded them, of course. Only an edict from the pontific had the ability to affect them. And then the marionette show keeps going on. The Tehlin struck the girl with the book once, twice, driving her to the ground where she lay terribly still. Obviously, very reminiscent of what the Cathay tells Kvothe about her patron beats her, which we know that is at least in some semblance of that is happening with Denna.
Yeah.
And then he goes, Nalto couldn't have told them to cross to the other side of the street. So here's something I question with that this brings to my mind is the fact that you have Scarpy tells a story that and the Tehlin priests come and arrest him for telling a heretical story, and he says, Tehlu hates you more than everybody else, more than everybody else does. And so if Tehlu hates these Tehlin priests, what I'm questioning is that maybe it could be that the split between the Menders and the Tehlins it's more than just a difference of opinion on this. Maybe the Tehlins were corrupted by like the Chandrian. And so now they are at like cross purposes of Tehlu, and that they are using his name and abusing his name, and that's why he hates them. But that that's that at one time they this was a church that served the purpose of Tehlu, but it got corrupted by the Chandrian or someone like that who is manipulating them, and now they're working at cross purposes of what Tehlu actually wants. And the fact that they Nalto couldn't disband the Amyr, but the Tehlins disbanded the Amyr. That could be pointing towards that the Chandrian corrupted the church, and they broke away from Tehlu. They disbanded the Amyr. They broke away from Selatos, and maybe the Tehlins are like the secret arm of the Chandrian, and whereas like the Amyr, the regular Amyr, were the secret hand of the Ruach Amyr of the Siridae. And so maybe that is kind of the battleground is like you have the Menders and the Amyr and the Siridae, the Ruach Amyr are all on one side, and then you have the Chandrian and the Tehlin priests on another side.
And you have most of the public believing, I would assume, the Tehlin priests are the good guys and the Amyr don't even exist.
Yeah. And it could also be that Braden is Dennis' patron, and he is a Tehlin, but he's working for Cinder. Like he's if the Tehlins are on the side of the Chandrian, maybe Braden is on the side of the Chandrian. He is a Tehlin priest.
Yeah, that's interesting. That would make a lot of sense. What we were talking about earlier, where Denna and Kvothe at cross purposes, right? She's getting helped in that direction then by her patron.
And I think my inclination again, I like I said, I think Braden is her patron, and I think he has some interaction with, like, I think he is using Greystones and that kind of stuff. I think that's how he's traveling, but I think it'd be more nuanced than he's working for the Chandrian. I think if he is working for the Chandrian, he's got his own purposes and he's manipulating them. He's at least trying to manipulate them. I don't think he's just like an agent.
Manipulate who?
The Chandrian. Whoever he's
Oh.
working for. I think he's working for himself. And I think he is, if he is
So
like
he's a
the
Machiavellian
Chandrian,
figure.
if the Chandrian think Braden is working for them, or if the Amyr think Braden is working for them, I think it's deeper than that. I think he's got his own purpose. He's playing it, like he says, he's playing a beautiful game. It's to make people,
Peter
to
Baelish.
walk into a trap and, those kind of things. And like, so I think it's going to be more nuanced than he's just working for the bad guys. I think he's got his own purpose.
Way. It's more. Well, either way, it would be interesting. It'd be interesting if he's working for the bad guy, and it feels that way anyway because of how close he is to Kavoth. How he does help him, but he warns him while he's helping him. He basically tells him, "Don't trust me. Don't trust anyone."
He seems like a very Machiavellian character, and I would be surprised if he's not. Like, if he's just like some one note good guy, bad guy, that would subtract from what has been set up.
Well, it also adds another wrinkle. It adds something a little bit more interesting to the existing story, where it's not just clear two sides anyway. They're nuanced to begin with, because you also have angels. Yeah, and you have all these people that are in between that don't really know who they're working for, who they even are, who they're becoming. And that's kind of what this chapter is about. Can Kavoth even see what's in front of him? It's great. It's getting layered on in a pretty tremendous way within these last few chapters. These last couple episodes with the greater good and what is the greater good and who thinks they're for the greater good. And then I like this element of like bringing in someone else like a Braden who doesn't play that paradigm at all, right? He's doing his own thing. So there's got
to be something there, because like the Tehlins and the Amyr were obviously working together for a long time, and then they split apart. And now Scarpy talks about like the Tehlu hates the Tehlins, the Tehlin priests. So like, if I'm looking at that, it's like, why would Tehlu hate the Tehlin priests? It can't just simply be that, they're, bad guys. They're just doing wrong. Like, it's got to be more than that. There's got to be something deeper.
I was looking at it even more superficial than that. Literally, I was thinking that specific, those two were they were corrupt. But yeah, that could be the case. But then
it's more than that, though. Like, Kavoth, it's like, those kids. It's like you go in and get the bread from the Tehlin priest, but you don't. It's not worth it.
Yeah, they're also
there's something dirty going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually,
and the Iron Law and all that kind of shit. Like, they seem to be very corrupt, and it would make a lot of sense if the reason they split from the Amyr was because the Chandrian fucking outmaneuvered the Amyr and took over that organization and pushed them out.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I hadn't seen that piece there. That sort of. That's a great nuance. That's a great additional complication to the the overall sort of backdrop of the world. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's my guess at this point, is that the Chandrian and the Tehlins are linked. The current Tehlin priests, the current Tehlin church are linked, and that they're more agents of the Chandrian. That would be my guess at this point.
It also feels right on an emotional level, because, like you just described those examples, we grow to dislike and have disdain towards the Tehlin church and the priests.
Yeah,
because they're scumbags.
Yeah, and I imagine it's nuanced. Like, Scarpy is like, I got people that got my back. And so I bet you there's people in the Tehlin church that, are still good. There's Menders, there's guys like Trappist,
yeah.
So there's a breakaway from the Tehlin church, but it would make sense too that the Menders broke away, because like the whole Tehlu is God to the Menders as well. So like for them to be like so heretical and shit, like yeah, obviously breaks. There could be minor
There's
disagreements
factions, yeah.
between religions that become fanatical, but it wouldn't surprise me that if they also broke away because the Tehlins became evil, like they turned against what it meant to be a follower of Tehlu.
That's the most reasonable. That's the best reason for faction in the first place, is that whichever group was going the right path got corrupted. Well, then obviously you would break away if you still believe. Yet, that group has now gone in a corrupted manner. Then you would need to faction off, or it's just done. And it's nothing but evil from there on out in those groups.
But yeah, that I think that there's something to these. These are important chapters. I mean, these are probably some of the most significant chapters in the book, like the story of Faeriniel and Puppet, their search of the Amyr. These are central parts of the story. And then when you look at all the other things we've talked about, my best guess is that there's something going on between the Tehlins, the Mendens, and their split, the split between the Amyr and the Tehlins, and I think it likely has something to do with the battle between the Amyr and the Chandrians and the Angels.
Well, and I don't think it's just coincidental that the Menders that we know of are good.
Yeah.
They're some of the more, I mean, Trappist is one of the most the best character. I mean, in terms of like, a noble individual. I mean, he's extraordinarily.
He's like a Mother Teresa of this world.
Yeah.
He's, his life is just extremely
suffering
difficult
for others. Yeah, just suffering for others. That's all it is. Yeah, and then Martin is, he's also commendable. He doesn't do anything that I remember that is, he's a positive character.
But yeah, so that is definitely something to, for the audience. That's another little piece to the pile to contemplate on what's actually going on. But then back to the puppet show that he's putting on. He's like the Tehlin at his feet stood and started to dance and caper about. That would lend towards her patron.
Oh yeah, he can dance. That's right.
And then feet. Yeah, and then why would they ask? Going back to their bet, why would Race say that Alpura Prolicia Amyr was Emperor Nalto's 63rd decree? Race wouldn't say any such thing, Puppet said, without looking up from the marionette at his feet. That's pure nonsense. But we found a copy of Lights that said exactly that, I pointed out. Puppet shrugged, watching the Tehlins dance at her feet. Could be a transcription mistake Willem used. Depending on the edition of the book, the church itself might be responsible for changing the piece of information. Emperor Nalto is history's favorite whipping boy. It could be the church trying to distance itself from the Amyr. They did some terrible things towards the end. Clever, clever, Puppet said. At his feet, the Tehlin made a sweeping bow in Willem's direction. So
that speaks to what you were saying. They did some terrible things Tehlins, at the end, that corruption.
Well, the Amyr, he's saying the Amyr did some terrible things. So the Tehlins were distancing themselves from the Amyr.
Well, could be the church trying to they did. Oh yeah. I guess that's right. Yeah.
But
what did they do? Started murdering people?
Well, I mean, you look at like fucking Gibeah, and he was likely a secret Amyr, so you can imagine that they were doing some fucked up shit. But
rounding up Rue and murdering him.
There's there's so much mystery behind what the hell's going on with the Amyr and the
Oh wait,
Chandrian.
that's the Vince. I misquoted. I misstated that. They rounded up Simmons people, right?
The Turns.
Yeah. I don't know. That's it ends up getting stated in the next chapter that the Amyr were even. Wasn't that the case, or was it? No, that's what Gibeah was doing. He was having basically
Gibeah
his
was
own
on
people
Sim's
rounded up.
land, yeah, and he was
Yeah,
experimenting on the people there.
yeah. My bad. Trying to be accurate.
But yeah, so it's tough to say exactly what the fuck's going on, but there's clearly something deeper going on between the Tehlins, the Amyr, the Chandrian, and all these groups. There is something deeper going on. Which is obvious. Anybody reading the books knows there's something deeper going on. But this is one of those chapters that points at it the clearest. That there's more to. It's not just that the Amyr are the good guys and the Chandrian are bad guys. There's complexity to the story, and there's also complexity to the Tehlins and the human Amyrs and the Menders, and there's much more to the story. There's many interchangeable parts. It's a much more complex story than a simple good guy versus bad guy thing. It's definitely not going to be that.
Yeah, it seems to be. It's a better story that way, right? I mean, when you just have black and white, there's a lot of gray area, obviously, with both of them. And then you have agents like you're talking about with Braden, which completely sort of make it a little bit less clear in itself, or at least in terms of what everybody's intentions are. Like, what is he after, basically? It's kind of the question. At least it's an interesting question.
And then, so it ends with Kavoth asks Puppet what's behind the 4-plate door, and he goes, he gave me a long, stern look. His eyes were serious and clear. I don't think the 4-plate door should be any concern to a student. Do you? I felt myself flush. No, sir. I looked away from his eyes. So I love the aspect of like how Kavoth comes in and is like this some cracked fucking student, it's a crazy person. Then when he gets chastised there, he's just like, no, sir. Fucking down.
Yeah, that the the tone of the chapter completely changes. The Talon stopped dancing and Puppet looked up. Like, it was very lighthearted with the Talon dancing and all that stuff, and he's just kind of almost flippantly addressing Willem's questions, about like, well, yeah, it could be this and that. Like, he's kind of lighthearted, and then everything changes when Kavoth asks that question.
Yeah, he shot it down. Like Elodin shoots that question down too, but more in he laughs his ass off at the idea of Kavoth even asking him about it. Like, oh yeah, you think you should know the secrets of the 4-plate door?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, little kid. He's like, yeah, I know, I trust me, I get where you're coming from. I felt the same thing, but yeah, no, you're not getting answers.
Yeah, well, I mean, it tells us the 4-plate door is some serious shit, not to be taken lightly.
Yeah, it's not going to be just like there's some secret books back there. There's something more back there. But yeah, and then when they go to leave, Puppet, he's like, stood and hung the Tehlin on the wall. It's time I got back to my reading regardless, he said. He moved to the padded chair, sat, and opened a book. Bring this one back sometime. He gestured in my direction without looking up from his book. I have some more work to do with him.
Yeah, that which insinuates that he's intentionally influencing and teaching.
Yes. Yeah. Seems like he was trying to, like Elodin, wake that sleeping mind type of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I love that he goes as far as, you should chase the wind for a while. You're too serious, which is literally what he's been doing, which is literally what he will continue to do. And
well, so, what he does specifically, like Elodin tells him, when he has to leave the university, it's like people used to leave the university because you had to go to wild places. You had to go and search for the name of the wind. You had to go chase the name of the wind. You couldn't do it while you're here in this sterile environment. You had to go to the wild edges of the world. And that's exactly what he does. And that's when he starts to gain control of the name of the wind, is when he finally leaves the university.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, what it ranked to me is a totally. Again, he's a seer, and he nails Kavoth. He nails what
Yeah.
Kavoth has been doing, has been trying to do, and what will continue to do. But yeah, that's even greater that it sort of
And
lines
obviously
up
the puppet
poetically with
show.
what Elodin says.
The puppet show is if it's not about Denna and her patron, I don't know what else it could possibly be. And so it seems like he knows. Even he's got very deep knowledge on a magical plane. Like that's not information. It's not like he's hanging out with Denna.
Yeah. Who? I feel like is there? Oh, the Cathay. I was searching in my mind who else does this. Who sees someone and sees their history, their past, their future, all of it, and it's the Cathay. And those are the two things you're connecting here: is the Cathay talking about what does happen to Denna,
Yeah,
and then what's already insinuated
beaten,
with beaten with a cane, right?
Yeah.
Here it's
it's. I mean, there's something there. What I'm really curious about is what I think is going to happen in book 3. I think this is the most likely scenario is when he goes and sees Puppet is going to do like Jeff Dunham, and he's going to put on a hilarious puppet show for him.
He's gonna just ratchet it up to ridiculous slapstick comedy.
Kvoth's gonna go in looking for answers, and this dude's gonna be like just cracking jokes left and right.
Yeah. Oh, look at Kavoth.
Gonna be doing the grouchy old man routine.
Jesus.
Like, hey, easy, buddy. The marionette's constantly just making ginger jokes, and he's like, hey, Puppet's like, settle down. Enough with quit knocking him about his ginger. He can't even help that. It's genetic, man. He was born that way.
I do love the idea that the puppet would be over the top, and he just keeps talking about how he's Rue and he's a piece of shit.
Yeah. Oh, look at this ravel piece of shit. Hey, easy, buddy. Easy. I'm sorry, Kavoth. I can't take this guy anywhere.
Jesus.
Kavoth just fucking like on wanting to lose his mind, but he's like, I'm dealing with a crazy person. Like, how can I like lose my shit at a crazy person?
He literally takes the puppet seriously and ends up bashing the puppet's face.
Yeah, Kavoth calls the name of the wind against the puppet. Gets kicked out of the university for fucking ruffling up Lauren's books.
Starts a fire.
Yeah.
Those candles get going. And who's he going to trust? Puppet or Kavoth? The one with the bad record.
It's like, you don't know what that marionette said to me. He called me a ravel bastard, man. Hit too close to home.
Dude, it's kind of funny. There was a part that reminded me of this weird thing this chick said to me once. I think you might have been in my class. But I don't know if you would have heard it. But when he talks about the Kavoth's demeanor, like he's just thought his next 3 moves in a game of Toronto and figure out he's going to beat you. I heard some chick in one of my classes said that I look like I had just slept with some dude's wife. That was her description of my look.
Huh.
Like, yeah, you just have this look like you just slept with some guy's wife. Something I don't remember the exact verbiage, but that's the gist.
Like a dirtbag. Yeah. No, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I was like, I
she
don't
nailed
know if
you.
that's. I was like, that sounds like I'm offending people. And she said she meant it as a compliment.
She meant it as a compliment.
That's what she said.
It's a rough one. It's I don't know how you come back from that.
I don't know. I didn't really have a comeback. I was just like, okay, I guess I'll put that in my pocket.
You look like a guy that's given everyone you slept with STDs, but like in a good way.
I don't think it's.
But like in a good way.
So there's like a magical STD.
Yeah. But no, I meant that in the most positive way possible.
I mean, I guess a sexual. Well, I guess it's not a disease, but giving somebody a baby, giving them something.
That's,
Sexually transmitted.
yeah, it is. I think the big part that people focus in on with the sexually transmitted part is the disease part. That's the problem.
Yeah, I guess
If
you're right.
if you take out the disease part, the sexually transmitted part, that's not that big of a deal. The disease is the big fucking problem.
Yeah. People are, they get their panties in a bunch about a lot of things.
Yeah. They get all worked up. Like, oh, it burns when I pee. Like, get over it.
But just to be clear, I feel like it's necessary. I've never given someone a sexually transmitted disease. I've also never gotten one, so that's cool.
I think that's most people. I think,
Or as Jim Carrey's character in
I'm curious if it's most people because it doesn't seem like something some people would talk about.
No, I don't think it's something people would talk about. I don't think they'd brag about whether or not they've had STDs. I do know. I like the Jim Carrey line in Cable Guy where he says, "Not a drip."
Not a drip.
It's so gross.
What does he say? Like, I'm clean.
Like,
I'm clean as a whistle. Like, not a drip or whatever. I can't.
He's talking about he got him a prostitute, and he's like,
I tested her out before.
And I'm clean as a whistle.
Yeah, not a drip.
It's so yucky. The moment he says
that is a legendary movie. I mean, that is so underrated. Like how fucking great and phenomenal that movie is.
Yes, it's very.
It's so dark. It's so dark and hilarious. About they're fighting. When they're fighting in the
medieval times.
Yeah, the medieval times thing, and he's doing like the Spock versus Captain Kirk. This dude's like, what the fuck is happening? He's literally like, I'm literally fighting for my life right now. This guy's trying to kill me.
I love like the game where they're playing Password with his parents. Yeah. It's sexual. He's like, dude, I'm not fucking playing. And he looks like an asshole. That's what's so genius about like that scene is everyone loves. I don't remember the character's name. Chip. Everybody loves Chip. Yeah. And then what's his face looks like a fucking prick.
Matthew Broderick. Yeah.
Oh man, to his own parents and his fiance. Oh man. Yeah, it's great. It is very underrated.
Cable Guy, classic movie. Classic.
It has classic homage, man. Homage to a really old movie with James Cagney.
Well, like all his fake names were from old movies. Like, I mean, his whole persona was old movies. That was the big reveal. True. Like this guy, he was not a legit cable guy. He was just a guy that's obsessed with old fucking movies, obsessed with TV.
I wonder if the character was written to have a lisp, or if he chose to, because the lisp is pretty great too. Like, gives him the gift, how to lose your lisp, and I don't know how many, whatever. It's like tapes. He's like thanking him for it, getting like teary eyed. It's so funny, man.
Classic movie. But so next week we got, what are we coming up on? We have Will and Sim. They're going to talk about the Duke of Gibeah. We're going to get more information on the Amyr. He's going to go and settle. He's going to make peace with Devi coming up. Those are going to be like the first major chapters we run into. I'm drawing a blank on. We're getting close to when he's going to get kicked out of the university.
I was going to say he's got to be leaving soon.
He's very very soon. Oh, the arrow catch is coming up.
Oh, nice.
Because it goes. He's got his conversation with Sim. Then he goes and talks to Devi. Got the arrow catch, and then Ambrose. Our fella makes her stone ring, then Ambrose gets the iron law called against Kavoth, and then Kavoth heads out of town.
Boom. And things really get
so moving. we won't make it out of the university next episode, but the episode after that, we should be heading out of the university.
Which is funny, man. One of the sort of controversies I've found online was, if it's a controversy, is that one of the things that people say is a critique against book 2 is that he leaves the university. People wanted more time at the university. I remember feeling that when it happened. I was like shocked. I'm like, wait, we're leaving this fucking place? This place is awesome. This is where everything's happening. How could you do this to me, Rothfuss? But because the world gets bigger, the Adem stuff, I mean, we're not even close to that. There's so much, the mayor, everything else that happens, like the royal court and all that stuff. It builds the world out in such an interesting way with Braden, the all of it. It's fucking great, man.
Yeah, it's easy to love the university, but I think it's easy to love his time with the mayor. I think there's a ton of interesting stuff. Braden is one of the most interesting characters in the books, and his interactions with Stape and Mayor Alvaron and Caudicus, that stuff's interesting.
Yeah,
his time with Denna there. Well, and when he goes to the Eld and, he's with the Martin and Dedan and Hespa and Tempe, that's interesting. He goes to the Adem, that's interesting. Like, it's all fucking interesting. It's all good. It's just like he's just opening up the world.
And speaking of Kavoth's, man, the tension of where he puts his ass on the line, not really thinking, because, and Sim talks about it in, I think, the next chapter or two, where he says, you don't really think, you just act. And he didn't really think, he just told the mayor, you're being poisoned. And then he gets his ass fucking involved, and it gets to the point where, like, with the birds and that whole complication, it's like, I could be fucking murdered, man. Like, what did I just do? Why did I just kept my mouth shut, But by getting involved, it made all the difference. But man, the tension that gets involved for the reader because of what we know, but then what's happening, it's fucking great. It's great because those birds end up being like that ticking clock, It's fucking great.
Yeah, it's I love this book. I mean, every section's phenomenal.
Well, and that again speaks to how great it is that every time we go ahead, it's like, oh, and this is coming, and then this is coming, and then it's just every section has great shit, and every section that we cover is like 5 chapters. So you tell me you have, I don't know how many chapters are in each book, but every 5 is like chock full of great shit.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's hard for me to relate with people who don't absolutely love these books. It's hard to relate.
Yeah, I mean, I can get having the prejudice against fantasy because I had that, but once you've read them, yeah, I don't understand it. You have you have some sort of agenda pushing that opinion. I would have to think, if you read the books with an open mind, how I don't know. I don't understand you. Would be the thing with that person. It's just like, I don't get where you're coming from, period.
But yeah, I think that'll fucking wrap it up for this week. And
speaking of wrapping it up, for those at the Stormwell Mountains and the Tallenwald, they would suggest you do that with your penis as well next time.
Yeah,
going back to the STDs. Wrap it up.
I don't believe in that, but
although, yeah, I actually don't. I hate. Yeah,
it doesn't feel as good.
No, you're right. You're definitely right. That's the worst thing about it, right? That's the most conclusive advertisement against condoms is that it just doesn't feel as good.
Just do what feels good. Take chances. Take risks.
Well, if you ever wear one and it breaks, during. Best evidence of how it feels better.
Yeah.
Without it.
Oh, man. All right, folks. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out.
See ya.